Chapter 1822. That's an outsider's business. Shouldn't we talk about our own business now? You came all the way here. There must be something important, right? Uncle Xiang narrowed his eyes. He really wanted to know how Wen Xiao would respond to his questions. Uncle Xiang, I won't hide it from you. Something big happened in Huaxia this time. Wen Xiao looked around as he spoke. He looked at the 3 tigers under Uncle Xiang and hesitated. Uncle Xiang smiled and gestured for everyone to leave. However, his subordinates were hesitant when they thought about how dangerous one-eyed Wen Xiao was. If he and Uncle Xiang were left alone in the room and something happened, they would not be able to rush to the scene in time to save the situation. Wen Xiao shook his head lightly and said, "Looks like Uncle Xiang's men don't trust me that much. Actually, I really don't have anything to suspect. Since I chose to come here, it means that I trust Uncle Xiang. If I'm stupid enough to do anything, it's really not worth it. If I dare to do anything to Uncle Xiang, I definitely won't be able to leave here alive. Since I've gone through so much trouble to escape from China and cross the border through the minefield, I don't intend to take my life lightly." Did you hear that? One Eye is such a sincere person. You bunch of bastards, I've wasted my time educating you. Uncle Xiang shook his head helplessly. Go, all of you go. Since Brother One Eye trusts me with something important, it means that he thinks highly of me. You guys actually don't know what's good for you? Hearing Uncle Xiang's words, his 3 tigers all left and chased away the people outside the door. They left Uncle Xiang's room far away. Everyone knew that One Eye had a secret to speak with Uncle Xiang alone. It wouldn't be good for anyone outside to hear. When it came to secrets, the less one knew, the safer it was. As mercenaries, they all knew this very well. They wouldn't listen to what they shouldn't listen to, ask what they shouldn't ask, say what they shouldn't say, and see what they shouldn't see. Only in this way could they gain more trust and live longer in this dangerous situation. Wen Xiao only breathed a sigh of relief when all the footsteps were far away. Uncle Xiang looked at Wen Xiao expectantly, hoping that what Wen Xiao said would not disappoint him. Uncle Xiang was the kind of person who knew what he wanted to know and what he wanted to get. Uncle Xiang, I came back to Huaxia this time to take revenge for what happened back then. I want to kill the person who forced me to this point. Wen Xiao said calmly. What was the result? Have you achieved it? Uncle Xiang smiled. Wen Xiao shook his head. No, I wasn't his match and was directly crippled by him. He's completely crippled. He doesn't even have the ability to fight back. But you look fine now. Uncle Xiang pretended to be surprised. Wen Xiao took a deep breath. I'm afraid you wouldn't believe me even if I told you how bad my situation was at that time. At that time, Vulture went to Huaxia to find me. He could have killed me in the hospital with just a flick of his finger. But he didn't do that. He wanted to see me suffer before dying. Uncle Xiang touched his chin. This is indeed Vulture's style of doing things. But why was he the one who died in the end and not you? This world is really amazing. There was something that could cure my condition. And Vulture knew about this secret. Wen Xiao said. Vulture tried to steal the magical treasure that could cure me, but he was killed by the Huaxia police. Uncle Xiang's laughter was a little cold. Although I'm old, I'm not stupid. With the ability of the Huaxia police, I'm afraid they don't have the ability to kill Vulture. There was a special force that joined in. Wen Xiao explained. It was impossible to rely on the police alone, but with the addition of special forces, Vulture was no match at all. There are too many experts in Huaxia. You know that even if I don't say it. Uncle Xiang nodded. This made it more realistic. Vulture definitely couldn't have died in the hands of ordinary police. There must have been an expert, and an extraordinary one at that, to be able to kill him. Vulture couldn't take away the divine item, and I was saved. Wen Xiao said. So I, who had lost all my martial arts, regained my strength. As he spoke, Wen Xiao clenched his fists. He said all this to test whether Uncle Xiang was the one who cracked Vulture's email. There's such a treasure in the world? Uncle Xiang shook his head. He didn't believe Wen Xiao at all. Kid, don't make fun of an old man like me. Are you trying to make me happy by telling me such an imaginary story? Ha 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 ha, Wen Eye, you don't seem to be so naughty in my impression. Wen Xiao looked helpless. Uncle Xiang, I'm really not joking. What I said is true. Otherwise, you see, I'm a cripple, and everything has recovered. No one knows whether you've become a cripple or not, Uncle Xiang said. Vulture knows. He knows that I've become a cripple. He can even stand in front of me arrogantly and do whatever he wants to me. I can't resist. Wen Xiao continued to exaggerate. Vulture knows everything. That's right. Vulture knows everything. He explained everything in the video he uploaded in the email. If Uncle Xiang was the one who cracked the email, he would know that this was true. Ha 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 ha. Uncle Xiang waved his hand. It's not good for you to use a dead person as a cover. Anyway, the dead can't testify. Except for him, no one can prove how difficult your situation was at that time. Wen Xiao was a little confused. It seemed that Uncle Xiang really didn't know anything about all this. Well, Uncle Xiang, since you don't believe me, I won't say more. Don't continue. Tell me your purpose. Uncle Xiang said. I believe you. After all, you've come to my door. If there's anything, whether I can help or not, just say what you need to say. Wen Xiao shook his head. It's useless to say more. Uncle Xiang still wanted to say something, but he stopped. He smiled faintly and changed the topic. It's not easy for you to cross the border. It's time for you to have a good rest. I'll arrange a room for you. You can have a comfortable hot bath. It's not too late to talk about it after you've washed off your fatigue. Uncle Xiang, thank you for your hospitality. Wen Xiao said, I'm just a guy who has nothing now. I have nothing to repay you. If you need anything, just tell me. I am definitely not the kind of person who freeloads. Ha ha ha, of course I know you, kid. Uncle Xiang said. But I like guys like you. I treat you as a friend. If you say this, you're treating me as an outsider. I met you because I treat you as a friend, not because I want you to do things for me. Wen Xiao smiled embarrassedly. Okay, go and have a rest. I'll ask someone to prepare a welcome party for you. Have a drink with me later as a way of thanking me, okay? Uncle Xiang said with a laugh. Wen Xiao cupped his fists and said, I can't thank you enough. I'm ashamed to accept Uncle Xiang's hospitality. Brat, you're treating me as an outsider. Uncle Xiang stood up and opened the door. He shouted outside, Someone take my guest to his room to rest. Get 2 soft and slender girls to serve my guest while he bathes. Wen Xiao thanked him as he refused, but Uncle Xiang still arranged 2 girls to scrub Wen Xiao's back. Wen Xiao knew that a large part of this was to monitor him, so he didn't refuse. Soaking in the warm wooden bathtub, Wen Xiao began to review his conversation with Uncle Xiang, trying to find some useful clues. Chapter 1823. From Wen Xiao's point of view, after talking so much with Uncle Xiang's reaction clearly showed that he didn't know anything about this secret. When he mentioned the mysterious treasure that could heal him in a short time, Uncle Xiang didn't have much of a reaction. Perhaps he really didn't know anything. But thinking about it carefully, Wen Xiao felt that something wasn't right. Even a person who didn't know anything would be surprised to hear that there was such a treasure in the world, right? At the very least, he would show a shocked expression. But Uncle Xiang didn't. He calmly said that he didn't believe it. With Uncle Xiang's life experience, it was impossible for him to not know about the existence of Paboyu. This kind of miraculous item that could allow one's martial cultivation to recover in a short period of time. Even if it only existed in legends, Uncle Xiang must be very clear that this item definitely existed. When Wen Xiao mentioned this, wouldn't Uncle Xiang have thought of it? Or even if he thought of it, he would pretend that he didn't know. If that was the case, then Wen Xiao couldn't help but suspect that Uncle Xiang already knew about the secret in the video. Some things were really more terrifying the more he thought about it. Wen Xiao already couldn't make a definite judgment. He didn't know if he could trust Uncle Xiang. He was regretting his initial decision. After all, an old fox like Uncle Xiang wouldn't reveal any flaws in a psychological battle. From the start, Wen Xiao seemed to have made the wrong choice. To make a move on this old fox who was hard to see through, he really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. All of this really made it too difficult for him to make a decision. If he made a wrong judgment, the result would definitely be very bad. And now, there was always someone beside Wen Xiao. Although Uncle Xiang's decision seemed to be well-intentioned, Wen Xiao had no way of contacting Lin Gu. He didn't know what Lin Ji's situation was now, and he couldn't tell Lin Gu about his situation. If Lin Gu knew that Wen Xiao was taking a hot bath and had two pretty girls helping him scrub his back, he would definitely curse Wen Zhao's 18 generations of ancestors. Lin Gu was in a miserable state now. He was hiding in the mud alone, not daring to say a word. His clothes were still wet, and it was drizzling. Lin Gu didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the harsh environment. Fortunately, he had endured a lot of these hardships during his previous training. Otherwise, he would have collapsed long ago. Lin Gu couldn't care less about the mud on his body and the gloomy weather. He had to be more careful, more cautious, and more cautious. He absolutely couldn't let himself be exposed. He had to do his best to sneak in. Hard work paid off. Lin Gu had already quietly passed through the sniper's surveillance range. At the bottom of a mountain, Lin Ji's eyes lit up when he saw a gurgling stream. He really needed to wash off the mud on his body. Otherwise, it would be inconvenient for him to move around. Fortunately, God gave him face. After a few drops of rain fell, the weather suddenly became hot and dry. Lin Gu quickly washed his clothes and found a branch to dry them. Soon they were dry. The improved weather made Lin Ji's mood a lot better, but Wen Xiao still hadn't gotten in touch with him, which made him a little uncertain. Could it be that this guy still hadn't mixed in with the mercenary group? He said that as long as he got in touch with the people of the local mercenary group, he would inform him as soon as he met them. Phew, this guy is really unreliable. Lin Gu cursed in his heart. This also made Lin Gu suspicious. Who knew if Wen Xiao was in cahoots with these mercenaries? If they were in cahoots, then what should he do? Thinking of this, Lin Gu suddenly felt that his situation was quite dangerous. If Wen Xiao betrayed him, then he would immediately become the target of the local mercenaries. In such a large forest, he didn't even know how many people there were. If he was really attacked, then he really wouldn't even have the chance to escape. The more Lin Gu thought about it, the more he felt that Wen Xiao was unreliable. He quickly put on his clothes. He needed to find a place where he could hide for a long time. And it had to be a place where he had the advantage. If the situation went wrong, he wouldn't just sit there and wait to be captured. Lin Gu was the kind of person. Even if he was going to die, he would definitely drag a few people down with him. Killing one was enough, killing two was a win. As long as he had this mentality, Lin Gu wouldn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt his blood boil. He didn't know that Wen Xiao was also having a headache about how to get in touch with him. Although his life was very good, he was still very sullen. Who knew when he would have the chance to be alone? Wen Xiao was also clear that Lin Gu didn't trust him. So if he couldn't get in touch with Lin Gu for too long, Lin Gu would definitely be suspicious of him. This was something that couldn't be avoided. It could be said that Wen Zhao's situation was worse than Lin Ji's. Although Lin Ji's living conditions were a little bad, at least he didn't suffer psychologically. Just as Lin Gu was trying to find a safe place to stay, his intuition told him that there was danger. Lin Gu didn't even think about it. He quickly ran up the nearest towering tree. The dense branches and leaves of the tree hit him, who was wearing a camouflage uniform, among the branches and leaves. Lin Gu was very patient. This could only mean that he had been raised well when he was young. He hid among the branches and leaves of the tree, and didn't even pant for a full 20 minutes. And just 20 minutes later, a small mercenary group of 5 people passed by. These 5 people were talking and laughing. They were very happy along the way. They were talking about women, and there was probably no topic other than women that could make them laugh so brightly. Soon, the 5 people arrived at the huge tree Lin Gu was hiding under. Because the tree was really big, it was naturally cooler under the shade. The 5 people walked under the shade of the tree, took out the water bottle they carried with them, and gulped down a few mouthfuls of water. One of them even untied his belt and urinated. He used all his strength to shake a few times before pulling up his pants. It seemed that these people were quite tired. They squatted under the shade of the tree and closed their eyes to rest. Lin Gu was speechless. If these people stayed here for a long time, they would definitely notice that there was something wrong with the tree. What should he do then? Should he make a move or not? If he didn't make a move, he would be in trouble. If he was really captured by the mercenaries, he didn't know what would happen to him. If he made a move, he would alert the enemy. No matter who he offended, there would definitely be more mercenaries coming out to capture him. When that time came, Lingu really wouldn't be able to continue living in this forest. To put it bluntly, no matter what Lingu did now, the result would definitely be very bad. He could only hope that these people would leave early and not discover him. However, blessings don't come in pairs, and misfortune doesn't come singly. Just as Lingu was worried that he would be discovered by the people under the tree, a hissing sound came from behind him. Lingu turned around to take a look. A snake as thick as a wrist was staring at him. At that time, Lingu was stupefied. Was this trying to play with him to death? There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. What should he do? He was in a dilemma. Looking at how bright the color of the snake's skin was, Lingu could guarantee that it was 100% poisonous. Moreover, this snake was already in an attacking posture. Every time it hissed, it would directly bite him. When that time came, Lingu would definitely dodge or retaliate. It would definitely make a sound. The 5 mercenaries under the tree weren't idiots. With just a few rounds of bullets, Lingu's but would probably be turned into a die. What should he do now? Lingu wanted to cry. Right now, he could only pray that this snake brother wouldn't do anything. Endure it for a while longer. Endure it for a while before it bites me. Lingu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the snake. His hand had already silently pulled out a dagger. No matter what, his life was still the most important. If he had no other choice, Lingu could do anything. Chapter 1824. Due to the climate in Southeast Asia, it was definitely a good place for poisonous snakes to live. Therefore, there were all kinds of poisonous snakes gathered here, such as king cobras, kite, silver-ringed snakes, sharp-snout vipers, white-lipped bamboo-leaved snakes, and so on. Southeast Asia had all kinds of poisonous snakes, and there were countless of them in this forest. And now, Lingu was facing a spotted centipede. It was a poisonous viper under the suborder viper, the viper family. It was a very thick snake, and its body was over a meter long. Many people knew that this snake had a nickname, the 100-paced golden leopard. Just from the name, one could tell how domineering this thing was. After being bitten, one couldn't even last 100 paces. Lingu took a deep breath. In his current situation, he couldn't find a hospital in a short time, and he didn't have the snake venom serum on him. If he was bitten by this thing, he was afraid that his life would end here. The spotted centipede slowly bent the front of its body backward. This was obviously an attack posture. As long as Lingu made the slightest threatening move, this large spotted centipede would rush forward and bite him without hesitation. Lingu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had heard of this poisonous snake before. The spotted centipede had 2 kinds of venom. One was a hemorrhagic toxin, and the other was a neurotoxin. Snakes with these 2 kinds of venom were very rare. The spotted centipede's venom would cause symptoms similar to a stroke, and the treatment might not be able to detect the venom in time, thus delaying the treatment. Unless Lingu could get his hands on the loose snake venom, he wouldn't dare to let this terrible thing bite him. Unfortunately, Lingu didn't have it. After being bitten by this thing, the blood would stop coagulating, and the whole body would bleed severely. The kidney would quickly fail, and soon there would be pulmonary hemorrhage and cerebral hemorrhage. Basically, death would be declared. The more Lingu thought about it, the more frightened he became. If it weren't for the people under the tree noticing, Lingu definitely would have made his move first. He would have directly used the dagger in his hand to pierce the spotted centipede 7 inches to resolve this terrible crisis. But now Lingu really couldn't do anything too radical. As long as he moved, the people under the tree would definitely notice. Not to mention that they were mercenaries. Even ordinary people could hear the sound in the tree. Lord Snake, can you bear with it for a while and wait for those 5 fellows to leave before we have some fun? Lingu stared fixedly at the spotted centipede in front of him and prayed. He really wanted to cry but had no tears. This feeling was too unbearable. The few people under the tree seemed to be tired from walking. They were chatting about something. Basically, they wanted to rest for a while before continuing. This place was cool. If they didn't rest for a while, They would feel sorry for themselves. Just as the few of them were chatting casually under the tree, the spotted centipede's body in front of Lin Ge suddenly expanded and shrunk, emitting a whooshing sound. It's over. This snake is completely frightened. The snake suddenly made a sound, and the people under the tree instantly quieted down. They all raised their heads and looked up. Lin Ge held his breath. F***ck God, are you kidding me? If the snake above also bit him, and the people below also opened fire, even if he was an immortal, he would definitely die here. There's a snake, a person under the tree suddenly said. He seemed to know snakes very well. Although he didn't see where the snake was, he made a judgment based on the sound. It might be a spotted centipede. We'd better leave quickly. Be careful not to be touched by this thing. Are you sure it's that thing? Another person was a little surprised. The person nodded. This month, it's the season for these things to be active and hurt people. We don't have that much loose snake serum to use. It's better to be careful. Last year, a brother died in the hands of a spotted centipede. Then shouldn't we avenge our brother? A short guy actually looked like he was about to climb the tree. I haven't eaten snake gall in a long time. Do any of you have wine on you? Lend me a sip later. Snake gall was the gallbladder in a snake's body that stored gallbladder sweat. It had the effect of dispelling wind, removing dampness, cooling, and detoxifying effects. It could also nourish a person's nervous system, strengthen their endocrine and immune systems, and slow down the body's aging. However, snake gall had a lot of parasites, and it was easy to be poisoned after eating it. Therefore, to eat a snake gall raw, it had to be taken with strong wine. Alcohol could effectively kill the parasites in the snake gall and reduce the harm. Also, the people who ate the snake gall had to be strong and had very good physical fitness. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. Mercenaries actually liked to eat snake gall raw. Their physical fitness was good, and they often hunted live snakes in the forest. If they didn't eat such a precious thing, it would be a pity to throw it away. Even if you didn't eat it, others would eat it, so it was still very rare. We're out to patrol. There's no wine. Don't make trouble for yourself. The leader said. Let's go. Don't complicate things. If you want to eat snake gall, I'll find a place to catch 2 krites for you when we go back. The snake gall is much better than the spotted centipede. Also, there's wine when we go back. You can drink whatever you want. Hearing this, the short guy put the dagger in his hand back into his combat boots and unwillingly picked up the gun on the ground. The 5 people left the tree one by one. Lin Ge's head was full of sweat, and beads of sweat began to fall down. His clothes, which had just been dried, were completely soaked in sweat in such a short time. He was really too nervous just now. The 5 people's footsteps were very fast. In less than a minute, they were gone. However, the frightened spotted centipede was still staring at Lin Ge. Fortunately, this snake's reaction would last for a long time after it was disturbed. It could even exceed the threat warning of half an hour. This gave Lin Ge a chance to catch his breath. Now that the threat under the tree was gone, Lin Ge didn't have to worry about a stupid poisonous snake. In the blink of an eye, when Lin Ge flashed his dagger, the spotted centipede suddenly opened its bloody mouth and bit at Lin Ge. Lin Ge's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. His left hand grabbed the snake's head, and his thumb pinched it 7 inches. His right hand raised the dagger and cut off the spotted centipede's head. The snake's head and body were cut in half, and Lin Ge hung it on a tree branch. As time passed, Lin Ge began to feel hungry. They weren't here for a vacation, so it was impossible for them to prepare food. Looking at the vast forest, Lin Ge didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He used to hate wilderness survival training the most, but now he had to face reality. What was edible in this forest, and what wasn't, he had to be clear about. There was still a very important day. The sky was clear, and the mercenaries had just passed by. He absolutely couldn't light a fire. Once smoke appeared, his location would be exposed, and people would rush over immediately. Although there were quite a lot of things that could be eaten raw in this forest, the taste wouldn't be very good. Lin Ge didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he stood up. There was no other way. He had to fill his stomach. Since entering the minefield yesterday, he hadn't eaten or slept for 12 hours. Physical exhaustion was very great. No matter what, Lin Ge needed to replenish some food. Of course, Lin Gu also hoped that he could catch some small animals, skin them, and roast them. But reality wasn't so beautiful. He could only think of ways to find things that were high in protein and calories. Only these things could quickly fill his stomach and replenish his physical strength. And it had to be the best thing to find. In this forest, the best thing to find was a large forest spider. Eating a dozen of them would be enough to replenish his physical strength. But these things tasted like thick liquid, or perhaps it was brain juice. There was no other way. Since Lin Gu was deeply trapped, he had to do this. Chapter 1825. Lin Gu used whatever food he could find to replenish his energy. Large spiders, grasshoppers, mantises, reptiles, all kinds of protein-rich things became Lin Ji's delicacies. Lin Gu didn't feel good about food at all. Every time he squeezed the disgusting reptiles out of their skins and ate their innards, he would feel nauseous. Lin Gu, who was not used to the jungle food, finally filled his stomach. His purpose was not as simple as eating. He needed energy. He couldn't weaken his energy. This was the most basic condition for him to survive in this place. If he couldn't maintain his energy, Lin Gu couldn't guarantee that he could survive. Facing all kinds of sudden dangers that could happen at any time, what Lin Gu could do was to replenish his physical strength as much as possible in his spare time, so that he could deal with those unexpected events and dangers in the future at any time. Lin Gu was very clear that everything he was doing now was to save his own life. Therefore, no matter how those bugs wriggled in his mouth, no matter how disgusting they made him feel, he would swallow them without hesitation. Even if those disgusting bugs still wanted to crawl out of his throat, he would use the stream water to flush them into his stomach. As for the rest, he would just leave it to his stomach acid to digest. Lin Gu finally finished this sumptuous lunch. Now he needed to find a safe place to rest on a big tree without snakes and wait for Wen Xiao to contact him at any time. If Lin Gu knew about Wen Zhao's sumptuous lunch, he would definitely be jealous to death. At this moment, Wen Xiao was receiving the highest level of hospitality from Uncle Xiang. As the leader of the one-eyed mercenary group that suddenly rose in Southeast Asia, Wen Zhao's reputation in this area was very prominent. At that time, even a high-level leader like Uncle Xiang was very polite to him. Very few people were willing to have any conflict with Wen Xiao. This was the reason why Wen Xiao could get such a position. Although Wen Xiao came to Uncle Xiang as a destitute person today, Uncle Xiang still gave him the highest level of hospitality. Wen Xiao was very clear about what this meant. There were a total of 28 sumptuous dishes at the banquet. From roasted whole lamb to whole suckling pig, from mountain delicacies to seafood, it was very rich. One had to know that this place was in the middle of nowhere, Southeast Asia. So many ingredients were very important. Mercenaries usually didn't live such a luxurious life. Although they received a sufficient supply of food every day, there was absolutely no situation where they could eat whatever they wanted to eat. Therefore, these 28 sumptuous dishes were definitely a welcome banquet for Wen Xiao. Good food and good wine. Uncle Xiang's self-brewed grain wine was very famous in the mercenary circle. If any of his mercenaries could get Uncle Xiang's wine as a reward, they must have made a great contribution. After all, the local wines in Southeast Asia were really not worth complimenting. In Uncle Xiang's words, he would rather drink beer than Southeast Asian local wine. It was too tasteless. Ever since he started his own wine, the mercenaries who followed Uncle Xiang knew that his words were really make sense. Especially in Huaxia, a country with a long history of wine culture. Uncle Xiang had definitely drunk countless good wines, so it was normal for him to be picky. Uncle Xiang, I really can't afford such a big show of extravagance. Wen Xiao knew the living conditions of mercenaries, so he knew very well what kind of treatment this was. Uncle Xiang, I really don't deserve such a level of treatment. There are so many people in Southeast Asia. If you say that you don't deserve my hospitality, then no one else deserves it. Uncle Xiang waved his hand. For so many years, I really don't admire many people, and you are one of them. Uncle Xiang thinks too highly of me, Wen Xiao said humbly. Under Uncle Xiang's lead, Wen Xiao took his seat. Not only did Uncle Xiang give him the highest standard of hospitality, but he also called the 3 tigers to accompany him. Any strong person in the mercenary world would definitely not get drunk after 1,000 cups of wine. Uncle Xiang wanted Wen Xiao to have a good drink, so he naturally came up with a plan of taking turns to fight him. Although Uncle Xiang liked to drink, he never drank too much. In his words, if an old man drank too much, he would be sending himself to hell. Just as the drinking party was about to start, a huge figure rushed in. Everyone felt that the atmosphere was not right. Wen Xiao took a closer look. It turned out to be Clark from the Night Leopard mercenary group. He was more than 2 meters tall, and had a terrifyingly strong body. No wonder people called him a giant. With such muscles, even bullets would not be able to penetrate them. Tianlu, who was sitting closest to the door, saw Clark coming in angrily. He immediately stood up and blocked Clark's way. He said coldly, "What are you doing?" Uncle Xiang just smiled and did not say anything. He just looked at Clark quietly. Clark stared at Tianlu. When he tried to use his strength to push Tianlu away, he realized that Tianlu, who was shorter than him and 3 times thinner than him, did not lose to him in terms of strength at all. Clark always knew that the 3 tigers under Uncle Xiang were very strong, but he never had the chance to fight with them. He did not have the chance in the past, and now that they were family, there was even less of a chance. Today was the first time he tested Tianlu's strength. Clark was obviously surprised. Uncle Xiang's guest is here. Of course, I have to propose a toast, Clark said stiffly. He really did not have a good impression of Wen Xiao. After all, when Wen Xiao's one-eyed mercenary group suddenly rose to power, the Night Leopard mercenary group was beaten to a pulp. A toast is fine, but you better use your brain and think clearly about who you are now. Tianlu calmly reminded Clark. If you brought your resentment from the Night Leopard group here, then get out of here now. Uncle Xiang does not need people from other mercenary groups. Clark's huge body trembled. He said coldly, I am not from other mercenary groups. I am Uncle Xiang's man. Uncle Xiang's man should know how to treat Uncle Xiang's guest. After Tianlu finished speaking, he stepped aside. At this moment, it was as if Clark's feet were trapped in cement. He could not move for a long time. He took a deep breath and looked at Wen Xiao, then at Uncle Xiang. Uncle Xiang smiled slightly, as if he did not care about Clark's sudden intrusion. However, Clark did not dare to judge how much dissatisfaction was hidden in this smile. In the end, Clark chose to give up. Uncle Xiang, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well. I won't be drinking with your distinguished guest. After Clark finished speaking, he bowed deeply and apologized to Uncle Xiang. When he saw Uncle Xiang waving his hand to indicate that he could leave, he quickly left. Looking at the huge figure leaving, Wen Xiao could not help but exclaim, I didn't expect Giant to be under Uncle Xiang. Congratulations, Uncle Xiang. Now in the entire Southeast Asian mercenary circle, I'm afraid no one can compete with Uncle Xiang, right? Sai, don't say that. We are all brothers who are mercenaries. After leaving the battlefield, we are family. Uncle Xiang said indifferently. One Eye, you should know what my philosophy is. I have always treated all mercenaries as friends. Wen Xiao smiled slightly and thought that's right. Otherwise, how could you become the biggest mercenary king in Southeast Asia? Sometimes the scariest thing was that people could play with their minds. Uncle Xiang's mind was too powerful. That was why he could become the most terrifying mercenary leader in Southeast Asia. If this continued, the purpose of the mercenary group that Uncle Xiang established would not only be for the large mercenary groups to communicate with each other, but also for him to unify the mercenary world. Uncle Xiang, I admire you. Wen Xiao raised his wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Perhaps this sentence really was sincere. Chapter 1826. Uncle Xiang smiled faintly and raised his wine glass. A long time ago, I heard a master say something. He said that no one in this world is trash. As long as he is placed in the right position, he is bound to become the center of attention. He will become the idol that everyone admires, as long as the position is right. That master probably borrowed Napoleon's words. Wen Xiao grinned. No one in the world is useless. It's just that they are not placed in the right position. Ha ha ha, speaking of borrowing, Napoleon's words were also borrowed from Li Bai's bringing in the wine. Uncle Xiang said, I am born to be useful. Wen Xiao raised his glass and laughed. Famous people are famous. Even their words are so good. They are all very good. It seems that Uncle Xiang has found his position. That's why he has achieved what he has today. Yes, everyone has something that suits them. I remember very clearly that when I was very young, in the early days of Huaxia, the college entrance examination was to select people. I remember very clearly that an older brother who was more than 10 years older than me was selected because the calluses on his hands were thick enough. He was recommended to go to college because his calluses were thick enough. Because his calluses were thick enough, it proved that he had a strong heart. Uncle Xiang seemed to miss his childhood. After that, everyone who wanted to go to college did nothing but rub the ground with their hands to get thicker calluses. It was really ridiculous at that time, Wen Xiao said. Not only that, I also started to grind calluses when I was young. But when I reached the age, the country reinstated the college entrance examination, relying on knowledge and strength. Uncle Xiang laughed. But I didn't know anything. When I was sensible, I started to grind calluses. Other than that, I didn't know anything. Wen Xiao was startled. Although Uncle Xiang's statement seemed to be a bit exaggerated, it really reflected the current situation of a certain period of time. Of course, I couldn't get into college. When my life was at its darkest, I suddenly had an opportunity. The army came to recruit soldiers, Uncle Xiang said. At that time, I swore to be a good soldier. It turned out that I was suitable to be a soldier. Since the beginning of the recruit training, I was the best in everything. After the recruit training, the people from the Air Force took a fancy to me. They gave me a physical fitness test and then brought me to the Air Force. Wen Xiao was stunned. He didn't expect Uncle Xiang to be a soldier. I was trained by the Air Force to be a special Air Force soldier. Not only can I fly a plane, but my other skills are no worse than the people in the investigation team and the Special Operations Group, Uncle Xiang said. I want to join the real Special Forces. I don't want to fly a plane anymore. But the Air Force won't let him go. Because you are a talent, of course they won't let you go. Wen Xiao frowned. But I don't want to ruin my future like this. Uncle Xiang said. In order to prove that I had the ability to become a real member of the Special Operations Group, I escaped from the Air Force and snuck into the Special Operations Group alone. Because of this, I was expelled from the army and faced 5 years of imprisonment. Uncle Xiang heaved a long sigh. I remember very clearly that I was already 29 years old. If I had been imprisoned for 5 years, I would have been 34 years old. I really don't have that much time to waste. I spent 3 years studying the structure of the prison and successfully escaped on a rainy night. Wen Xiao looked at Uncle Xiang in surprise. He didn't expect Uncle Xiang's story to be so complicated. I became a wanted criminal in the country, Uncle Xiang said. But I really didn't do anything. I just wanted to become a member of the Special Operations Group. I also used my strength and ability to prove that I have the ability to become a qualified member of the Special Operations Group. But why do so many people treat me as a terrorist? Uncle Xiang shook his head helplessly. I really didn't expect that I would fall to that point. If it wasn't for someone sheltering me at that time, I'm afraid that I would have been imprisoned for another 10 years. When I saw the wanted poster, I had the idea of running away. Since Huaxia didn't want to keep me, I wanted to set up my own Special Operations Group. Uncle Xiang stood up excitedly. Facts have proven that I can do it. I'm the most suitable person for this position. It's those people who are blind and can't see my strengths. They suppressed me. They made me useless. Uncle Xiang, the army has its rules and principles. Some things can't be blamed on the army. Wen Xiao said. They have their reasons for doing so. Reasons? Ooft. Uncle Xiang said. I've heard some stories about you. You're a member of the Special Operations Group. Why did you betray them? What are you thinking? I was just confused for a moment. Wen Xiao didn't want to mention this matter again. Confused? Uncle Xiang said. I think you only woke up at that moment, right? You've been brainwashed. When you suddenly woke up, you would be seen as a threat, and then there would be orders to get rid of you. If you didn't run away, you would definitely not have a good ending. Isn't that right? Although this meal seemed peaceful, it was Uncle Xiang's hangmen banquet. And this hangmen banquet wasn't a threat of swordsmanship, but a psychological threat and suppression. Uncle Xiang wanted to use Wen Zhao's weakest psychological link as a breakthrough and go to the deepest part of Wen Zhao's heart. Only in this way could he figure out what happened to Wen Xiao and Hua Xia and determine whether the video in Vulture's email was true. Wen Xiao was silent. That was the experience he didn't want to recall the most in his life. He rubbed his temples and smiled at Uncle Xiang. Uncle Xiang, in fact, some things are not as bad as you think. Life is really full of too many misunderstandings. Uncle Xiang sneered. He didn't trust Wen Xiao anymore because Wen Xiao had changed. In the past, Wen Xiao was full of hatred towards him for mentioning this matter first. But now Wen Xiao was trying to forgive everything that had happened in the past. This kind of change not only reflected a person's psychological problem, but also reflected a person's standpoint. Wen Zhao's standpoint had changed, so he considered the problem from the standpoint of the opposite side. To some extent, this meant that Wen Xiao had become the opposite side. Thinking of this, Uncle Xiang had to be more careful when dealing with this matter. He would never admit that he knew Vulture's secret. He wanted to see how Wen Zhao's injuries were recovering. If he really had such amazing self-healing ability, then Uncle Xiang would believe in Paboya's existence 100%. It was actually very easy to test Wen Xiao. Of course, Uncle Xiang wouldn't fall out with Wen Xiao on the surface, and he wouldn't let his subordinates be the bad guy either. Just now, Giant Clark had already shown his unfriendliness towards Wen Xiao. Naturally, he was the most suitable person to be the bad guy now. Uncle Xiang smiled and raised his wine glass. Yes, life is full of too many misunderstandings. Some things can be laughed over. However, there were some things that couldn't be gotten over. That was something that couldn't be gotten over. People with different mentalities will have different outcomes. Uncle Xiang, I toast to you. Thank you again for your hospitality. Wen Xiao didn't want to dwell on this topic. It wouldn't do him any good to talk too much about it. It was better to end this meal early and let him go back to rest early. He could also think of a way to get in touch with Lin Ge. One eye, from now on, Uncle Xiang's place will be your home. Uncle Xiang drank the wine in one gulp. Some people will betray you, but Uncle Xiang isn't that kind of person. Uncle Xiang knows what loyalty is. My brothers also know my temper. I treat you as a brother, so I won't betray you. Of course, I don't like my brothers using me either. That would make me very disappointed. Wen Xiao smiled and put down the wine glass in his hand. I also don't like people using me. Uncle Xiang, it seems like we really hit it off. Yes, we hit it off. Uncle Xiang said. One eye, you're still young. You can be used easily. Think carefully. Aren't you being used by someone right now? Don't let your guard down, especially those closest to you. They're the most likely to use you. Wen Xiao grinned. I'm a useless person. What value do I have? Ha ha ha. Chapter 1827. After a round of toasting, Wen Xiao had drunk enough. Uncle Xiang had achieved his goal. He knew he couldn't let Wen Xiao get drunk, but alcohol could numb people's nerves. If Wen Xiao had any ulterior motives, this drink could slow down his nervous system and make him less thoughtful. Although it was just a meal, Uncle Xiang had put in a lot of effort. It could be seen that he was indeed a cunning old fox. Many people knew that Uncle Xiang was cunning, but when they came into contact with him, they couldn't feel that Uncle Xiang was cunning at all. This was where his brilliance lay. When Wen Xiao returned to his room, Uncle Xiang waved at Tianlu, indicating for him to come over. Uncle Xiang, do you have any other orders? Tianlu walked in front of Uncle Xiang and bowed. Is there something wrong with one eye? Whether one eye is a problem or not, we can't rush to a conclusion for now. But we'll know soon. Uncle Xiang smiled and said. When the giant saw the one-eyed man, he didn't seem to be very friendly. Do you think that if he was given a chance, he would teach one-eyed a lesson? Tianlu was startled. Let Giant Clark have a conflict with one eye? What was Uncle Xiang thinking? Tianlu couldn't figure out Uncle Xiang's thoughts at all. He looked at Uncle Xiang blankly. You mean? Go and tell Clark that during the dinner just now, some of the things one eye did made me very uncomfortable, but I have to treat him as a guest. Some things can't be done too obviously. Uncle Xiang said. Just say that, and he'll understand what he needs to do. Tianlu nodded. He understood what Uncle Xiang wanted to do. Yes, Uncle Xiang. I'll go tell him now. Hearing these words, Clark's eyes glowed with a green light. He stared at Tianlu seriously and said, Uncle Xiang really can't stand one-eyed? Then if I attack One-Eye, I'll be fighting for Uncle Xiang, right? Tianlu nodded. As long as it's for Uncle Xiang and not for the Night Leopard mercenary group, I won't stop you. I'm relieved to hear that. As long as you support me, I'll do it. Clark stood up, the veins on his muscular body bulging. Although he said that he was fighting for Uncle Xiang, that wasn't the case. The real reason he hated One-Eye was because the Night Leopard mercenary group had suffered because of One-Eye. Tianlu didn't say anything else. Uncle Xiang had said that as long as he told Clark these words, he would know what to do. So the rest would depend on his own understanding. I'll leave first. Don't worry, leave the rest to me. Clark fiercely threw out 2 heavy punches, the wind from his fists whistling through the air. I must let that bastard know the consequences of disrespecting Uncle Xiang. Tianlu left Clark's room without looking back. He was very clear in his heart that if it was a fully recovered One-Eyed, he would definitely be able to beat Clark to a pulp. If Clark wanted to properly educate One-Eye, he could only hope that Clark would meet a sick and disabled One-Eye. Uncle Xiang was indeed Uncle Xiang. He wouldn't easily believe any of One-Eye's words, but he also wouldn't take the initiative to sound him out to make One-Eyed suspicious. Once One-Eyed became suspicious, the result of his probing wouldn't be completely trusted. Only by using Clark to test all of this for him would the results be absolutely true. Because if One-Eye wanted to pretend not to fight back, the giant Clark would really kill him. Uncle Xiang wasn't worried at all that One-Eye would be trampled to death by Clark. If One-Eye couldn't even deal with such a person, then he would really be a cripple. One had to know that when One-Eye was at his peak, he could single-handedly destroy the entire Night Leopard mercenary group. At the same time, Uncle Xiang was not worried at all that Clark would be killed by One-Eye. If One-Eye really had the strength to kill Clark, it would prove that what Vulture said in the video was true. One-Eye had become a cripple. Then he would be able to obtain a definite answer. One-Eye could recover all his strength in a short period of time. Even the most precious elixirs wouldn't have such an effect. A miraculous treasure that could achieve such astonishing recovery speed was most likely the Pobo Jade worn by the Zixahoya tribesmen. If the Zixahoya tribesmen and Pobo Jade still existed, and could ultimately fall into Uncle Xiang's hands, then the entire world would be his. His ambition didn't only exist in the mercenaries of Southeast Asia, but the mercenaries of the entire world. He wanted the mercenaries of the entire world to become his subordinates. At that time, the entire world would belong to him, and he would be able to do whatever he wanted. So what if it was the United States? If he had the mercenaries of the entire world, then Uncle Xiang really wouldn't be afraid of contending against the United States. If that was the case, then he would have full confidence and confidence. Just thinking about it would make one's blood boil. Although Uncle Xiang wasn't young anymore, the hot-bloodedness in his bones still existed. Becoming the king of soldiers was his life's dream. If this matter could be proven, then it would be the best opportunity for him to realize his dream. The giant Clark had the strong physique of a Westerner. In the entire Southeast Asian mercenary circle, it was almost impossible to find anyone who was stronger than him. Ever since the Night Leopard mercenary group was disbanded by One-Eye, Clark had always been a fragrant piece of meat in the eyes of many mercenary group leaders. In the end, Uncle Xiang managed to convince Clark with his glib tongue, and made him one of his generals. Many people envied him for a long time, because of this. Now in order to test One-Eye Wenshao, Uncle Xiang was willing to sacrifice such a talent. This was because he was very clear about what was more important, and what could be sacrificed. Unfortunately, Clark didn't know that he was being used. He was still focused on solving the problem for Uncle Xiang. When he arrived at the door of Wen Zhao's room, the loud sound was enough to intimidate the people in the room through the glass. When Wen Zhao saw the giant figure at the door, he immediately guessed who it was based on the size of the figure. Since you're here, then don't be so courteous. Come in. Wen Zhao invited. We've known each other for a long time. Come in and have a cup of tea. Clark pushed the door open. One eye, do you think I'm in the mood to drink tea with you? Wen Xiao smiled faintly. I know, you've always had a problem with me because of the Night Leopard mercenary group. But at that time, I wasn't the one who caused the trouble. It was your boss who was aggressive and didn't want to leave me a way out. That's why I was so ruthless. Clark's mouth twitched and he clenched his fists. That's all in the past. I don't want to talk about it with you. You know Uncle Xiang's temper. Don't let him think that you still care about the Night Leopard mercenary group. That will make him lose his trust in you. Wen Xiao reminded him with good intentions. You don't have to worry about that. Whether or not I can gain Uncle Xiang's trust is my business, Clark said. But you've always made me unhappy. That's your business. Wen Xiao was startled. It seemed that Clark's anger was still quite high. Could it be that he was really going to do something? One eye, long time no see. Shouldn't we move our muscles and bones? Clark stretched his neck and moved his wrists and ankles. This is Uncle Xiang's territory. As a guest, I don't think it's good for me to fight with his people here, right? Wen Xiao was ready to fight at any time. He knew that Clark's strength was terrifying and he couldn't let his guard down. Clark sneered. Since you don't dare to fight with Uncle Xiang's people, then bear with it, because Uncle Xiang's people dare to fight with you. As he spoke, Clark had already swung his fist at Wen Xiao. That explosive force was very fast. It was obvious that he wanted to catch Wen Xiao off guard. Chapter 1828. Unfortunately, Wen Xiao was not that easy to deal with. Wen Xiao, who was already prepared for battle, immediately dodged Clark's heavy punch. Immediately after, Clark's powerful leg swept towards Wen Xiao. Wen Xiao raised his arms to block, and with a boom, his entire body was kicked away, landing heavily on the wall behind him. The houses here were not as sturdy as imagined. If Wen Xiao had not deflected most of the force, his body would probably have made a big hole in the wall. Wen Xiao did not want to make a big deal out of it. No matter what, this was still Uncle Xiang's territory. No matter how much Clark crossed the line, he was still Uncle Xiang's man, so no matter what, Wen Xiao did not have the upper hand. Wen Xiao would rather choose to endure this grievance than fight with Clark. Once the fight got out of hand, it would only put him in an awkward position. Clark, there shouldn't be any personal grudges between us, right? Wen Xiao said. Why do you have to be so aggressive? The Night Leopard mercenary group has already disbanded, so has my mercenary group. There's no need for us to fight over some small matters, right? Did I say that I'm doing this for the Night Leopard mercenary group? Clark laughed coldly. I just don't like it. Why, are you afraid to accept my challenge? Wen Xiao was of course angry. Even Uncle Xiang was polite to him. So how could a mercenary group leader under Uncle Xiang be so arrogant towards him? Then he must have been mean to Black Dog, right? What was Clark, the giant, worth? Back then, Wen Zhao's one-eyed mercenary group only sent out 7 or 8 brothers to beat the *T out of his group of more than 10 people. In the end, the leader of the Night Leopard mercenary group even had his throat pierced by a bullet and died by the Crocodile River. In the end, his body did not even have time to be taken away before it became a delicious lunch for the crocodiles. A leader from such a down-and-out mercenary group dared to yell at him, look down on him, and be unhappy with him? What right did he have? Even if his one-eyed mercenary group disbanded, it was not because of anyone. He was the one who wanted to disband. In terms of strength, fame, and influence, which of these aspects was he one-eyed? Not better than Clark? Damn it, he actually dared to compete with him. Who the hell was he? Clark, if we weren't at Uncle Xiang's place, I would have told you to scram with your tail between your legs. Wen Zhao's anger had already risen. You're a coward. When you were in Yi Bao, you were a coward. Now that you're under Uncle Xiang, you're still a coward. The veins on Clark's body bulged. Then let me see how hard you are. If I don't make you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy today, I'll have wasted all my years on the battlefield. If you have the guts, come out and fight with me. Do you dare? Wen Xiao spat. If you really have the guts, come with me now and leave Uncle Xiang's territory. I'll fight with you however you want. Whoever dies outside is useless. Don't King grumble. Clark was startled. He really hadn't thought too much about this. A large part of the reason he came here to look for Wen Xiao was to vent his anger on him. But now that he was going to play a life-and-death battle, he really didn't have any confidence in his heart. No matter what, Wen I was Uncle Xiang's guest. If he really wanted to fight with his life, he really had scruples. But then again, since Wen Xiao had come to visit, it meant that he had a favor to ask of Uncle Xiang. He couldn't possibly kill Uncle Xiang's people, right? Wen I, don't play this game. After Clark thought it through, he sneered and said, "No matter what, I'm Uncle Xiang's man. You came here to look for Uncle Xiang, so you don't dare to kill his people. So you don't dare to kill me at all. What's the point of saying all this nonsense?" Wen Xiao nodded. "That's right. I don't dare to do anything to you in Uncle Xiang's territory. That would be me not giving Uncle Xiang face. But you should be very clear about the rules of the mercenaries. If you and I don't fight in Uncle Xiang's territory, then it's not considered not giving Uncle Xiang face." The mercenary world had its own rules. If you touch someone else's people in their territory, then they would definitely come looking for you. But in a public area outside, if something happened, then it was hard to say. Even if someone was killed, the killer could say that he was being attacked and was defending himself. So as long as there was a fight in a public forest, death would be a meaningless death. This was what Wen Xiao meant when he said that he wanted to ask Clark out. Clark didn't think of this point. When he realized it now, the confidence in his heart suddenly disappeared by more than half. In Uncle Xiang's territory, he was full of confidence. This was a psychological reason. But once he went out, then he and Wen Xiao wouldn't have any home ground difference. His little psychological advantage would be gone without a trace. Once this psychological advantage was shattered, Clark could no longer summon his domineering aura. "Wen Xiao, you're forcing my hand. You know very well that Uncle Xiang won't forgive me if I really kill you, whether we're outside or not. I don't care. If you want to fight, then go out with me and have some fun. Otherwise, don't pretend in front of me." Wen Xiao provoked. Clark snorted. "I'm pretending? Why should I listen to you? I'm going to teach you a good lesson here. If you don't dare to fight back, that means you don't have guts. Even if Uncle Xiang punishes me, I'm going to cripple you here today." With that, Clark picked up a chair and viciously smashed it at Wen Xiao's head. Wen Xiao cursed in his heart. This bastard didn't care about manners. He leaned to the side to avoid Clark's sneak attack. The chair crashed into the bed with a crash. Wen Xiao, who was burning with anger, couldn't help but control his fist. Taking advantage of this gap, he punched Clark's lower abdomen. After all, Clark's body was huge. His reaction speed was naturally slower. Moreover, Wen Xiao's speed was fast enough. He couldn't keep up. With this punch, Clark was sent flying. He smashed through the door and fell out. The loud noise attracted the attention of others. After all, the base in the forest wasn't too big. The simple wooden houses were all very close to each other. Their purpose was to defend against enemy sneak attacks, as well as against wild beasts and ferocious beasts. This sound was enough to attract the attention of others. Wen Xiao knew that since he had thrown out that punch, it was impossible to take it back. What was done couldn't be changed. Clark had lost face in front of so many of his own people. Of course, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He endured the pain in his lower abdomen, got up and charged at Wen Xiao again. In for a penny, in for a pound, Wen Xiao might as well go all out to meet Clark head-on. Both of their fists tore through the air. Although Wen Xiao didn't have the advantage in height and arm span, his speed determined his victory. When he executed a strange maneuver in the air to dodge Clark's fist, everyone knew that he had won. This punch had the strength of over 1,000 jin. No one would be able to withstand it if it smashed into their face. This was no different from a truck stepping on the accelerator and crashing into someone. The explosive power of his legs, waist, and arms were all focused on his fists. When Wen Xiao's fist smashed heavily into Clark's face, the so-called giant fellow no longer had the strength to resist, as his body was sent flying backwards in an almost inverted manner. His entire body was foaming at the mouth, and he was delirious. Blood flowed out of his eyes, nose and mouth. This punch might have really taken half of Clark's life. Back in the day, Wen I had been able to rise to prominence because of his ruthlessness. None of Uncle Xiang's subordinates had ever fought with Wen Xiao before. Today they were all stunned. After all, Clark had been one of Uncle Xiang's top generals, but today he had fallen under a single punch from Wen Xiao. Wen Xiao himself knew very well that he had taken advantage of Clark's anxious state of mind. If Clark's state of mind had been better, he wouldn't have been knocked to the ground by a single punch. He had been too anxious to win. That was why he had given Wen Xiao such a big opening to knock him to the ground. Clark, who had fallen to the ground, spat out a few mouthfuls of white foam before falling silent. The atmosphere was especially quiet. Everyone was waiting for Uncle Xiang to come out and deal with this. No one dared to say a word. Tian Lu, who had been watching all this from a corner, couldn't help but frown. When I was really too strong. He didn't seem to be injured at all. Chapter 1829. The loud noise attracted everyone's attention. Clark tried to stand up several times, but due to the violent concussion in his head, he was unable to do so. Every time he tried to stand up, he would stumble and fall. However, the unwillingness in his heart made him try to stand up again, but the result was the same. After sitting on the ground 3 or 5 times in a row, Clark knew that he no longer had the ability to fight. If he were to take an X-ray now, his brain would probably turn into paste, right? Uncle Xiang had seen the overwhelming advantage that Wen Xiao had displayed. Uncle Xiang was well aware of Clark's strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done everything he could to rope him in when the Night Leopard Regiment was disbanded. However, it was an undeniable fact that he was no match for One Eye. Therefore, all this proved that Wen Zhao's body was absolutely fine. Phew! Uncle Xiang took a deep breath. He remembered the video that Vulture had shown him clearly. Wen Xiao was lying on the hospital bed, motionless. In that situation, even if a primary school student went up and stabbed him, he would definitely not be able to fight back. In such a short period of time, he had regained his normal strength, and could still use his powerful strength to insta-kill Giant Clark, a mercenary in the world of mercenaries. He was still that intimidating One Eye. Everything was just too unbelievable. That's right, Paboyu. It must be Paboyu. In this world, only Paboyu could restore a cripple to his peak in such a short time. Moreover, it was the Paboyu that was worn by the Sequoia tribe all year round. The amount of information that Wen Xiao had was too much. His punch just now proved the existence of the Sequoia tribe, and the existence of Paboyu. It also explained why Vulture died in Huaxia. Since Vulture knew such an important secret, the people in Huaxia would definitely not let him leave alive. What a good Vulture. He still had the time to record all the secrets in advance into a video. Hee hee. It seemed that this guy was also worried that he would not be able to come back alive. This secret was left for the fated one to avenge him, right? The wrinkles at the corners of Uncle Xiang's eyes were like deep ditches. The vicissitudes of life were written all over this middle-aged man's face, but his eyes were filled with unprecedented excitement. He really hadn't been so excited for many, many years. Nothing could make him so excited for many, many years. He'd naturally heard of the legends of the Silhoya clan. And if he obtained the assistance of the Silhoya clan, then his current strength would definitely rise by a level. An expert of the Earth Profound Realm was very clear on what kind of strength he would obtain every time he advanced. Furthermore, if his strength was able to break through the Earth Profound Realm, just how great would that be? Whoosh! Uncle Xiang really didn't dare to think about it. It was completely unimaginable. Although the ascension of strength brought about by the Zixahoya tribesmen was somewhat unorthodox, it was far more reliable than Wen Zhao's method of increasing his strength by selling his mind and releasing his inner demons. As long as his state of mind could keep up, the ascension of strength brought about by the Zixahoya tribesmen was real. The cultivation of the state of mind was actually very important. The reason why Su Yun was able to endure the sudden increase in strength brought about by Guogua was because Wang Yi had always taught him to pay attention to the cultivation of the state of mind. Therefore, Su Yun's state of mind was very strong, which was why he could endure the changes in his strength. Uncle Xiang also paid attention to the cultivation of his state of mind, so he believed that if he could obtain the help of the Zixahoya clan and Paboyu, he would definitely be able to break through more than just one level. At that time, who in this world would be able to stop him? At that time, Even Lu Xuanji, the ancient magpie world, and Wang Guangxiao, these earth-profound realm experts would be trampled under his feet. At that time, the only one who would dare to challenge him would probably be the Empress, right? But the Empress was only a woman after all. He also had the Zixahoya clan and Paboyu in his hands. Sooner or later, he would step on the Empress's shoulder and reach the supreme peak. The more Uncle Xiang thought about it, the crazier he felt. His world was already blank, and his mind was filled with endless power. When a person was obsessed with power, he would really become a crazy madman. Ding Kai had already called out to Uncle Xiang twice, but Uncle Xiang still didn't seem to hear anyone calling him. He was completely immersed in his own world, unable to extricate himself. Uncle Xiang, you should come out. Ding Kai had no choice but to touch Uncle Xiang's arm. This pulled Uncle Xiang back to reality from his fantasy. Uncle Xiang was in a daze. He also realized that he was indeed thinking too much just now. Perhaps many things weren't so idealistic. Fantasy was always too simple, but reality was always very difficult. Uncle Xiang actually didn't know how to face Wen Xiao for a moment, but what would come, and he couldn't avoid it. One Eye is still the same One Eye. Between you and him, who do you think is more powerful? Uncle Xiang suddenly turned his head and said this to Ding Kai. One had to know that among Uncle Xiang's subordinates, Ding Kai was definitely his #1 warlord. He was also the ferocious tiger that Uncle Xiang valued the most among his 3 subordinates. Ding Kai was slightly startled and thought for a while. I'm afraid I'm not One Eye's match. He's a guy who dares to make a deal with the inner demon. If he doesn't borrow the power of the inner demon, I'm still confident. But his terror doesn't lie in his own strength, but in the fact that he dares to gamble with his life. You're right. Not everyone dares to easily use the inner demon as the source of power, Uncle Xiang said indifferently. But looking at the state of his strength just now, it seems that he didn't borrow the power of the inner demon. One Eye seems to be different from before. It's a little different, Ding Kai said. But One Eye isn't that terrifying anymore. Uncle Xiang smiled and strode out of the room. Wen Zhao's mind was in a mess. He really did use a lot of force. When Uncle Xiang came out, he didn't know what to do. No matter what, this was Uncle Xiang's territory. No matter what, he had to give an explanation for injuring one of Uncle Xiang's people in his territory. This was the rule. Uncle Xiang looked at Clark, who was still foaming at his mouth and twitching slightly. He knew that this guy wouldn't be able to recover in a short time. Uncle Xiang smiled and said, One Eye, this is... Uncle Xiang, I'm sorry, Wen Xiao said very humbly. I'm really sorry. I apologize for my actions. This is your home. I'll punish you as you wish. After saying that, Wen Xiao put his hands behind his back and prepared to receive any punishment. He had been in the mercenary circle and knew the rules of the mercenary circle. Many things had to be done according to the rules, and no one could break the rules. One Eye, what are you saying? Uncle Xiang said indifferently. You're treating me like an outsider. It's my fault for not being strict enough and frightening the guest. I've been rude. At this time, Tianlu also walked forward and prepared to take Clark away. Tianlu, what did I tell you? Watch him for me. Just now when we were eating, he wanted to cause trouble for me. I thought this matter was over. Why is there such a drama now? Uncle Xiang pretended to be angry. Tianlu lowered his head apologetically. Uncle Xiang, I didn't watch him well. Please punish me. Forget it. There's no point in saying anything now. It's already happened. Fortunately, the guest wasn't hurt. Otherwise, how can you bear the responsibility? Take Clark away. I don't want to see him now. Uncle Xiang said with slight anger. Uncle Xiang's people all knew that he wasn't a person who got angry easily. However, once he got angry, it would be a big deal. Yes, Uncle Xiang. Tianlu directly took Clark away. Croc wanted to say something, but his mouth was numb and he couldn't say a word. He didn't know why this happened. It was Tianlu who told him that One-Eyed had offended Uncle Xiang at the dinner party, so he came to fight One-Eyed. Why did it become like this now? Clark, who wasn't smart enough, couldn't figure it out. He was just a chess piece used by Uncle Xiang to test Wen Xiao. A chess piece would be thrown away after it was used because it was useless. Chapter 1830. When Xiao was a little surprised that Uncle Xiang wasn't angry. According to a normal person's reaction, even if it was Clark's mistake, this was Uncle Xiang's territory. His own people had been beaten up in his own territory. Even if there was a mistake, Wen Xiao would have to give an explanation. Not only did Uncle Xiang not ask Wen Xiao to explain, but he even expressed his apology to Wen Xiao. It was in front of so many of Wen Xiao's subordinates. Uncle Xiang didn't even consider the most basic convincing others in order to save his face. This was indeed not Uncle Xiang's style of doing things. Uncle Xiang was able to obtain his current position in the mercenary circle not only because of his own strength, but also because he was tactful enough to make people believe in him. Before doing anything, Uncle Xiang had to consider the problem of convincing his subordinates. Only when he could make his subordinates believe in him would they be loyal to him. This way he could obtain more and more power. As his power grew and became more and more unstoppable, Uncle Xiang became more tactful. This was a beneficial cycle. Uncle Xiang's principles and his ability to convince his subordinates spread far and wide. This caused many people to like to work for Uncle Xiang. Mercenaries risked their lives for a living. It didn't matter who they worked for. Why not find someone who could make their lives more comfortable? This was a very normal state of mind for people. Uncle Xiang's words today might not convince his subordinates because there was a geographical restriction here. Wen Xiao could not be punished for what he did to Clark in Uncle Xiang's territory. This meant that he would not be punished for what he did to any of them. After all, not everyone could know the truth like Uncle Xiang's 3 tigers. What people saw was only the surface, which would give Uncle Xiang's subordinates an illusion that Uncle Xiang would ignore them for an outsider like One Eye. In this way, Uncle Xiang's subordinates would lose their trust. When Xiao fell into deep thought, Uncle Xiang had always done things with people's trust in mind. There was no need for him to lose people's trust in order to save Wen Zhao's face, unless he had a bigger purpose or a more important goal. But what could Uncle Xiang have that was more important and wanted than people's trust? Wen Xiao felt a little uneasy. This made him suspicious. After all, the secret in Vulture's email could be obtained by anyone in the mercenary group in Southeast Asia. Of course, this included Uncle Xiang. Wen Xiao couldn't see Uncle Xiang's sincerity from the fact that he didn't know anything at the beginning, and the way he treated Wen Xiao with respect. This was a situation that made people feel uncertain. Since this matter has happened today, I will also tell everyone that although One Eye has disbanded his mercenary group, he is still someone who is on equal footing with me. Moreover, he's here as a guest, so I won't allow anyone to be disrespectful to him. What Uncle Xiang said was only one of the reasons. What he said next was to comfort everyone. All of you know that Clark used to be from the Night Leopard mercenary group. You all know how the Night Leopard mercenary group disbanded. I won't say anything else. In the end, Clark was still the one to blame for this. He had also helped Uncle Xiang find out Wen Zhao's true physical condition. The reason why an old fox was called an old fox was because of the way he did things. Although he had slapped his own man in the face, he was able to smooth things over. This was Uncle Xiang's ability. No one else in the mercenary circle in Southeast Asia could do this. Therefore, Uncle Xiang was a truly capable person. Uncle Xiang, I feel very embarrassed by your behavior. When Xiao was stunned, he bowed and said, "Please follow the rules." "My words are the rules here," Uncle Xiang said with certainty. "When I go and rest, you don't need to ask about anything else. You just need to remember that you are my guest." This reply was too domineering. The storm was resolved under Uncle Xiang's extreme handling. When Xiao returned to his room but couldn't fall asleep, he realized that he had to get in touch with Lin Guo as soon as possible. All of Uncle Xiang's reactions made him feel slightly uneasy. If there were any sudden changes, he wouldn't be alone and helpless. Uncle Xiang had already started to think about other problems. He gathered the 3 tigers who had been following him loyally to his room. He didn't say anything and made a gesture to leave. Whenever Uncle Xiang had to make the most important decision, he would leave with his 3 subordinates to a place where no one could find them. The walls had ears. Uncle Xiang knew very well that he was able to survive in this dangerous and competitive place, until now because of his carefulness and prudence, as if he was covered in thin ice. After Uncle Xiang left in the car, Wen Xiao, who had been suffering from a lack of opportunities, realized that his chance had come. He could finally find a way to get in touch with Lin Ge. Wen Xiao didn't dare to get in touch with Lin Ge, mostly because he was worried that Uncle Xiang would hear the slightest hint that something was wrong with him. Lin Ge had eaten a stomach full of bugs, spiders and ants. He had been waiting for Wen Xiao's call for a long time. He was so excited that he almost cursed out loud. However, he knew very well that he could not open his mouth to speak. This was what they had agreed on. Who knew if this call was from Wen Xiao? Even if it was from Wen Xiao, if he opened his mouth, some things would be exposed. So their agreement was very clear. Lin Ge couldn't open his mouth except to listen. Soon, Lin Ge heard the sound of teeth clattering on the phone. He was stunned. This wasn't what they had agreed on before. Did they have to use Holmes' code for this conversation? Moreover, it was very difficult to distinguish between the short and long sounds made by the clattering of teeth. Lin Ge hurriedly took out his dagger. Following the long and short sounds made by the clattering of teeth, Lin Ge began to quickly translate every letter and number in the code. Finally, after racking his brains, Lin Ge wrote English letters on the tree trunk in front of him. After the call ended, Lin Ge began to translate the letters carved on the tree trunk. Soon he got the answer. Wen Xiao told him that he had infiltrated the largest mercenary group in Southeast Asia. He also told Lin Ge the coordinates and the general situation of the base's defenses. Also, Wen Xiao said that he suspected that the leader of this group was the one who cracked Vulture's email. So he needed Lin Ge to infiltrate the enemy's core as much as possible. If he needed any help, Lin Ge could coordinate with him from the inside to prevent him from fighting alone. Lin Ge wiped the sweat off his head. In the past he didn't like this kind of code. But now, it seemed that if he hadn't been forced to remember these useless things, even communicating with Wen Xiao would be a big problem. I've been fighting alone all this time, and you didn't help me. Now that you've realized the danger, you want me to help you. Damn you. Lin Ge scolded unhappily. But even if he was unhappy, he still had to do what he had to do. No matter what, he didn't come here to play. He had to do what he had to do. Lin Ge once again confirmed the coordinates of the enemy base that Wen Xiao had told him. As long as he avoided these few points and was more careful, it shouldn't be a problem for him to sneak in. The problem was how to coordinate with Wen Xiao once he had truly entered the enemy's base. Every step was so scary, and he could only take it one step at a time. Lin Ge shook his head and used the dagger to scrape away all the words he had carved on the tree trunk. He sighed helplessly. It was really too difficult to cooperate for the first time without tacit understanding. If Lin Ge had to choose again, he didn't know if he would have the courage to take on such a difficult task. Forget it, forget it. It's getting late. I need to start looking for a safer and more effective infiltration route as soon as possible. Lin Ge didn't have any other thoughts. He only had one thought. It would be great if he could sneak into the enemy's kitchen and get something to eat. Chapter 1831. Uncle Xiang and his three most trusted subordinates were far away from his base. The off-road vehicle was jolting violently in the forest, but Uncle Xiang didn't have any expression on his face. There were too many things in his mind, so much so that he couldn't feel the jolt. Finally, Uncle Xiang raised his hand and said to Jing Chu, "Stop." Jing Chu immediately stepped on the brakes and parked the car in a secluded and cool area. After the car was parked, Ding Kai, Jing Chu and Tian Lu, the three most loyal men of Uncle Xiang, focused their gazes on Uncle Xiang in the back seat. Uncle Xiang picked up his teacup and took a sip. The tea was still warm. "The three of you are the only three people I trust. You have also seen the secret in Vulture's mailbox. The person who cracked the mailbox was also killed by you, Tian Lu. Therefore, the only people who know this secret are the four of us." The three of them didn't speak and quietly listened to Uncle Xiang's speech. I believe that anyone who saw the video would be excited, but they would also be suspicious. After all, this matter is really too unbelievable. Uncle Xiang continued. But now, I believe that all of you should be the same as me. The suspicions in your hearts have basically been eliminated. Why? Because Vulture, who knew about this secret, died in Huaxia. Ding Kai continued. and the person who benefited from this secret has appeared here. Furthermore, with One Eye's current condition, there are no signs of him being seriously injured. Jingchu was the most cautious among the three of them. Uncle Xiang, don't tell me that there really is a miraculous medicine in this world that can rapidly heal one's body? Ha ha ha, you think too much, Uncle Xiang said indifferently. I don't dare to say that such a miraculous medicine doesn't exist in this world, but I would rather believe that One Eye's recovery was due to Paboyu than to believe in such an illusory miraculous medicine. I dare say that even Huang Fuguo wouldn't be able to refine a miraculous medicine that could rapidly heal a disabled person after consuming it. If he had that ability, he wouldn't have been ridden on by the Empress. He would be the #1 person in the underground world. Jingchu nodded and didn't speak anymore. Tianlu spoke again. But what virtue or ability does One-Eyed have to be able to obtain the affection of the Zixahoya tribe and Paboyu? His identity in Huaxia is the same as us, a defector. What kind of person would allow him to be healed by Paboyu? I really can't understand this. Apparently, Tianlu's question had struck a chord with the other two as they nodded in agreement. Opportunity is a very subtle thing. No one can say for sure. Uncle Xiang said. Perhaps this is One-Eye's fate. Then why did he come here? Ding Kai said. This is the most important thing to figure out. The first possibility is that the Pobo Jade is with him, and he knows the identity of the Zikajoa. He wants to escape, find a shelter, and find someone he can trust to stand on the same side as him, and get what he wants together. Uncle Xiang narrowed his eyes and swept his gaze across each of the three tigers. Do you think this is possible? The three of them shook their heads at the same time. The reason was simple. If they were in his shoes, they would never share such an earth-shattering secret with someone they didn't have any connections with. Even someone they trusted might betray them because of this earth-shattering secret and try to stab them in the back. Why would someone they didn't have any connections with share such a secret with them? Wouldn't it be better to just monopolize it? Actually, this place also reflected Uncle Xiang's cleverness. Uncle Xiang didn't keep this secret by himself. Because he knew that if he kept this secret by himself, his three subordinates would feel that they were not trusted once they leaked it out. There was another reason why Uncle Xiang dared to share this secret. He was not like Vulture. This secret was only known to Hong Ying, so Hong Ying wanted to rebel against him. The two of them turned against each other and became enemies. In the end, Vulture killed Hong Ying directly. Uncle Xiang didn't share this secret with one of the three of them. If only one of them knew about it, he couldn't guarantee that such a huge temptation wouldn't cause a huge reaction in their hearts. He shared this secret with the three of them directly. In this way, Ding Kai, Jing Chu, and Tianlu would play a role in restraining each other, which would completely eliminate Uncle Xiang's own danger. Uncle Xiang cleverly turned one person's secret into everyone's secret. In this way, he wouldn't be in a situation where he had to worry about being stabbed in the back. Of course, there was a more important point. If Uncle Xiang wanted to keep this huge secret for himself and achieve his ultimate goal, he couldn't do it alone. He was very clear that if he wanted to achieve the final success, he had to get the help of these three people. Without them, he would only fail. Uncle Xiang, is there any other possibility? Ding Kai was very clear that Uncle Xiang must have other ideas. The second possibility worries me more. Uncle Xiang said, since we can crack Vulture's mailbox, it means that other people can crack it. It also means that other people will know that we cracked Vulture's mailbox. How could One-Eyed know that we know this secret? Tianlu said, I killed the person who cracked the mailbox with my own hands. He couldn't have told anyone else about it. With the development of network technology, there's no need for anyone to tell. Uncle Xiang said, I know such a simple principle. Can't you understand? Tianlu, don't worry. I definitely don't mean to suspect you. If I did, I wouldn't have brought you here today. Do you understand? Believe me, I believe you. This is our common interest. Do you still remember what I said to you when you first joined me? The three of them nodded, indicating that they remembered. Uncle Xiang smiled slightly. I, Xiang, am a man of my words. Since you are my brothers, I will bring you to glory, to the peak. I promised you before that I would make the whole of Southeast Asia belong to us. What about now? Who in the whole of Southeast Asia dares to go against us? Indeed, no one dared. And now, I'm going to take you guys further. So believe me, I won't suspect any of you, because you'll never betray me. You're my brothers. I believe you, and you have to believe me. Uncle Xiang's brainwashing ability was extraordinary. The three of them nodded, indicating that they would definitely stand their ground. If Wen Xiao is here to test us, then what should we do? I need you to give me some advice, Uncle Xiang said. For this matter, we have to overcome the difficulties together. We will share blessings and hardships together because we are brothers. Tian Lu's idea was simple. Uncle Xiang, let's go back now and tie up one eye. I'll interrogate him personally. I don't believe that he won't say anything. It's not a good idea to fight head-on, Ding Kai said calmly. Moreover, since Uncle Xiang mentioned the first possibility, it means that there's a chance that the first possibility exists. If the first possibility exists, One Eye will lose his trust in us because of our recklessness. Ding Kai is right. Jing Chu also said. If I were in his shoes, I would have wanted to seek protection and help and share my benefits. Even if I choose to fight to the death, I won't share the benefits that I've obtained. Uncle Xiang smiled and nodded. Their analysis was very reasonable. Fortunately, I have you guys by my side. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult for me to deal with it alone. Let's take one step at a time, and see how One Eye will react next. We'll adapt according to the situation, and use both the carrot and the stick. The three of them nodded in agreement. Let's go back. We've been out for a long time. Let's go back early to prevent One Eye from having too many thoughts. Uncle Xiang said. From now on, you guys can't wear things on your faces. You can't let One Eye see anything wrong. Chapter 1832. After Uncle Xiang brought his men back to the base, his men immediately went up to him and whispered something in his ear. After hearing this, Uncle Xiang frowned slightly, and the three valiant generals under him also widened their eyes. Obviously, this news made them think of a more likely choice. Just when they left, the people in the base detected an unknown communication signal. The call lasted for about 20 minutes. All of this was very obvious. Mercenaries couldn't talk on the phone all the time. Even if they called to tell their families that they were safe, there was a fixed time. The supervision was even stricter than the regular army. If someone would talk on the phone for 20 minutes, it couldn't be anyone in the base except for Wen Xiao. Because in Uncle Xiang's sphere of influence, his own people were very obedient and knew the rules of the call. Only Wen Xiao didn't know the rules. But Wen Xiao had no reason to call anyone. Uncle Xiang and the others were very clear about his situation. One Eye was alone. When he escaped abroad, he had no one to rely on. Now that he had disbanded his own mercenary group, it was even more impossible for him to have anyone to care about or rely on. This time, when he left the country and said that he escaped, it also meant that he had no one to rely on in Huaxia. How could he call anyone? Unless it was a tip-off, unless it was a premeditated call. All of this made Uncle Xiang feel very uneasy. At this moment, Uncle Xiang's heart was very tormented. His whole body seemed to be stagnant. After a few minutes, Uncle Xiang seemed to come back to his senses. He strode straight to Wen Zhao's room. No one said anything and just followed behind Uncle Xiang. When Uncle Xiang walked to the door of Wen Zhao's room, he waved his hand to signal for everyone to stop and not follow him in. At this time, his three men finally controlled their emotions. They suppressed their anger and stood guard at the door of Wen Zhao's room. Uncle Xiang's sudden visit surprised Wen Xiao. He drank so much at noon that it was only now that he started to get drunk. Wen Xiao was in a daze for less than 10 minutes. This kind of sleepy feeling was quite uncomfortable. But after all, the owner of this place was here. He could only force himself to get up. Seeing Wen Zhao's slightly drunk state, Uncle Xiang smiled slightly. It was said that one would speak the truth after drinking. He would like to see what kind of truth this guy would tell him. One-eyed, have you had a good rest? Uncle Xiang asked calmly. How long have you slept? Uncle Xiang, your wine is really too strong. I couldn't take it when I entered the room. Wen Xiao smiled. Even if you let me sleep for the whole afternoon, I don't think I'll wake up. Haha. Good wine, really good wine. Uncle Xiang waved his hand. This wine doesn't have a strong after effect. If it had a strong after effect, we would all be drunk before we could finish a meal. After Brother One-Eye drinks this wine, not only can he cripple Clark, he can also chat with him on the phone in the room. When Wen Xiao heard this, he panicked. Fortunately, he didn't show it on his face. He pretended to be relaxed and smiled. "Sai, don't mention it. I just wanted to call a Huaxia girl. But when I dialed the number, I fell asleep. When I woke up in a daze, I found that the phone had already been hung up. I was thinking about calling her again, but I fell asleep again. This wine is really powerful. One-eyed, you're really romantic. Ha ha ha, you're going to Huaxia to do such an important thing, and you're still in the mood to pick up girls?" Uncle Xiang patted Wen Xiao's shoulder. "It's good to be young. You're full of energy." Wen Xiao also smiled. "Uncle Xiang, you're also not old. You're definitely not worse than us young people." I'm old. I can't do it anymore." Uncle Xiang shook his head. Wen Xiao felt a burst of panic. This old fox was really powerful. He even knew about his phone call. Soon, Wen Xiao understood that there must be communication signal monitoring equipment in Uncle Xiang's base. As long as his mobile phone had any contact with the outside world, it would be detected. Therefore, less than 10 minutes after he made the phone call, Uncle Xiang came to find him. Thinking of this, Wen Xiao had to take out his mobile phone. To be honest, he had done a lot of preparation work. There was only Lin Ji's number in his mobile phone, and the name of the number was Seductive Beauty. The profile picture of the caller ID was also a private photo of a young model. As Wen Xiao spoke, he dialed the number and said to himself, "I really miss this girl." Uncle Xiang suddenly hung up the phone that Wen Xiao hadn't dialed yet. He knew very well that if Wen Xiao dialed the number now, he only needed to remind the person on the other end of the phone to understand what was going on. This would allow the two of them to communicate. "One-eyed brother, I believe in you. You don't need to use your actions to explain anything," Uncle Xiang said. "The most basic thing between us is trust, don't you think so?" "Of course." Wen Xiao nodded. "If I didn't even trust you, I wouldn't dare to come here. Ha ha ha, now I'm worried that Uncle Xiang doesn't trust me enough." With that, Wen Xiao shook the mobile phone in his hand, which meant that he would be suspected even if he made a call. Uncle Xiang smiled slightly. "One-eyed, it's not that I don't trust you, but sometimes, I have my own rules. If you want me to trust you, give me the phone. You want to confiscate it." Wen Xiao was stunned. Although he was unwilling, once the phone was confiscated, he would lose the way to contact Lin Ge. However, in this situation he had to do as Uncle Xiang said. Otherwise, he couldn't guarantee that Uncle Xiang wouldn't suddenly turn hostile. Wen Xiao quickly judged the stakes of the matter, and directly handed the phone to Uncle Xiang. "Uncle Xiang, if you don't trust me, take it away. As long as I can make you trust me, I don't care about anything." Uncle Xiang didn't refuse. He took the phone from Wen Xiao and dialed the only number in the phone with a smile. "It's not that I don't trust you, one-eyed brother. I'm just curious about what kind of woman can make one-eyed, who can do anything in the mercenary world, so infatuated with her." The phone was dialed, but Wen Xiao didn't say a word. He was very clear about Uncle Xiang's thoughts. When Lin Ge picked up the phone again, he still didn't say a word. He silently took out his dagger and prepared to record the message in the form of Sherlock Holmes code. However, there was no sound from the other side of the phone. Lin Ji's ears were almost pricked up, but he still didn't hear any sound. What the hell was this guy doing? Lin Ge was stunned, but he really didn't dare to be careless. Who knew what happened on Wen Zhao's side? Lin Ge didn't say a word, and was ready to record the password at any time. However, a bird was disturbed by something and gave Lin Ge a fright. Uncle Xiang held the phone and didn't say a word. In the face of no response at all, he didn't know what was going on. Wen Zhao's suspended heart finally settled down. As long as Lin Ge made the slightest sound, he was dead meat. Fortunately, Lin Ge was reliable enough. He didn't say a word under the circumstances where he didn't get any response. A minute passed just like that. Uncle Xiang handed the phone to Wen Xiao. He shrugged his shoulders and signaled Wen Xiao to deal with it himself. Wen Xiao took the phone and scolded into the phone in a bad mood. "Do you really think you're some kind of golden branch or jade leaf? Don't be so shameless. You didn't even say a word when I made a call. What's the meaning of this? Let me tell you. You're just a plaything in my eyes. Don't King think you're rare. When Lin Ge heard this, he felt his chrysanthemum tighten. What the hell was going on over there? It really made him feel like he was going to collapse. Then the phone was hung up. Listening to the busy tone, Lin Ge spat. Wen Xiao shook his head angrily. Uncle Xiang, to be honest, I really didn't think that I would be infatuated with a woman. You're a young man. It's said that heroes have a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. Brother One-Eyed can see a woman as a plaything. That means you're a hero among heroes. Uncle Xiang patted Wen Zhao's shoulder. One-Eyed, it's not that I don't trust you. Don't take what happened just now to heart. I can understand, Wen Xiao said. If I were Uncle Xiang, I would be careful too. Chapter 1833. This made Wen Xiao break out in a cold sweat. He didn't expect that his phone call would almost expose himself and Lin Ge. It seemed that things were getting more and more dangerous. After a day of observation, Wen Xiao felt that something was wrong. Wen Xiao realized that Uncle Xiang was being too patient. He was 80% sure that Uncle Xiang was the one who broke into Vulture's email. When he led the one-eyed mercenary group to war, he had encountered difficulties in cracking the network. At that time, Uncle Xiang had arranged for a young man named Ajin to help him. Wen Xiao had been in Uncle Xiang's base for a day, but he hadn't seen Ajin. This made Wen Xiao a little nervous. If the secret in the email was obtained by Uncle Xiang, then it must have been Ajin who broke into the email. Now that he couldn't find Ajin in Uncle Xiang's base, it was very likely that he had been killed because the secret was too big. Although this was only Wen Zhao's conjecture, from the current situation, everything was already pretty close to the mark. Wen Xiao couldn't stay here any longer. If he did, Uncle Xiang would definitely think of a foolproof plan to deal with him. When that time came, he wouldn't be able to escape. Wen Xiao didn't expect to barge into such a dangerous place as soon as he left the country. He realized that he had to get in touch with Lin Ge as soon as possible and leave this place as soon as possible. He had to pass on his judgment and wait for Su Yin to arrive before making a decision and taking action. If he were to die here, everything would be over. Wen Xiao had already contacted Lin Ge and asked him to sneak in. Now he had to find a way to contact Lin Ge again and tell Lin Ge exactly how to cooperate with him. He had to seize this opportunity tonight. Otherwise, with Uncle Xiang's brain, he would definitely come up with a perfect plan tomorrow. By then, it would be too late for Wen Xiao to act. Since he had predicted the result, he had to act as soon as possible. If he delayed, he would only suffer the consequences. Uncle Xiang's attitude changed a little after sunset. There was no sumptuous dinner in the evening, only simple dishes. Although he invited Wen Xiao to dine with him, he didn't serve him any good wine. No one knew what Uncle Xiang was thinking, but since he did this, he must have his own reasons. After dinner, Uncle Xiang said to Wen Xiao lightly, "One-eyed, please don't take it to heart that we didn't entertain you properly. It's just that we have something very important to do tonight, so we can't stay with you for long. Rest well tonight and treat this place as your own home." Wen Xiao was startled. "Uncle Xiang, what are you doing tonight?" "Just a small matter," Uncle Xiang said indifferently. "It's just that it's related to some special circumstances, so I have to show up personally. I'm going to take most of my brothers out. If there's any emergency situation here, I hope that Brother One-Eyed can lend a hand. Uncle Xiang, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know." Wen Xiao suddenly realized that this might be a good opportunity for him to escape. "Why don't you leave this matter to me? I'll take some of my brothers out to help you settle this matter. It's also a greeting gift for disturbing you." Uncle Xiang laughed. "One-eyed, oh one-eyed, you're really treating me as an outsider. You're a guest. There's no reason for a guest to help you. Besides, this matter can only be solved by me. If you can really help me, I'll definitely ask you." "Uncle Xiang, I'm so sorry." Wen Xiao was a little disappointed that he had lost such a good opportunity. But thinking about it carefully, if Uncle Xiang took most of his men out, then he would have a chance here. Even if it was inconvenient for him to escape, he could contact Lin Ge and ask Lin Ge to sneak in and create chaos. He could take the opportunity to escape. No matter what, this was an opportunity. Uncle Xiang nodded and said confidently, I'll leave my nest to you. This is really a big matter. Brother One-Eyed, you can see how much I trust you. I won't let you down, Uncle Xiang. Wen Xiao nodded. While the two of them were talking, Ding Kai had already gathered most of his brothers and was ready to go. Once Uncle Xiang gave the order, he and his 3 tigers, as well as nearly 3/4 of his brothers, left the base. Judging from the situation, it was definitely not a small matter. Perhaps they were going to do something outside of their territory. Now Uncle Xiang's base could be said to be an empty shell. Only 1/4 of the people were left, and none of them could really take responsibility. The only experienced leader, Clark, was still lying in bed. Wen Zhao's punch had given him a concussion. He would probably need to rest for a few days to recover. Another capable black dog was also sent out to do other tasks. Ding Kai, Jing Chu, and Tian Lu were also not left behind. Putting aside other questions, Wen Xiao really admired Uncle Xiang's courage on this point alone. He was really brave. However, this was definitely an opportunity for Wen Xiao. If everyone left, it would be easier for him to leave. Lin Ge would also be less exposed to danger. At this moment, Lin Ge was really not safe at all. He was moving stealthily according to Wen Zhao's instructions. He knew all the dangerous targets and could naturally avoid them. However, he did not expect that a large number of figures would appear on his path. Lin Ge was stunned. Other than the figures, there were also cars. It was as if they were sweeping through the place. What was Wen Xiao doing? Did he set himself up? Lin Ge could only think of one thing at this moment. Why did such a situation suddenly appear on his path? He was now at a low place. If he got up and fled, he would definitely be noticed by people in the distance. Even if he was dressed in camouflage, it was impossible to escape the eyes of so many people. Lin Ge knew very well that the further the moving target, the easier it was to be exposed. He was now lying on the grass. Because the grass in the forest was tall enough, as long as he did not move, he could hide himself very well. The most terrifying problem came. Lin Ge could not turn around to escape. If he turned around to escape, he did not know how many snipers would aim at him. This distance was definitely within shooting range. An excellent sniper would only need 2 to 3 seconds to aim and shoot. Lin Ge was confident that he could dodge one shot. However, it was absolutely impossible for him to dodge 2, 3 or even more sniper shots at the same time. However, if he did not escape and Lin Ge just lay there, the result would be even more terrifying. Because there were so many people and cars approaching him step by step. Once they passed by him, the consequences of Lin Ge being discovered would be even more terrifying. This was not a group of hooligans. If Lin Ge were to go berserk, he could take care of them in 3 to 5 minutes. These were all well-trained mercenaries. Moreover, they were not those useless mercenaries who only knew how to eat and wait for death. These were all elite soldiers. They were all baptized in the face of death in war. These people were definitely not easy to deal with. Once Lin Ge was discovered at close range, the possibility of him sacrificing himself would soar to 100%. Phew. This was really bad. Lin Ge had encountered many dangerous situations in his life. However, this was the first time he encountered such a dangerous situation. Lin Ge had no choice now. He could only gamble. He gambled that these people would not see him when they passed by him. Even though the chance of that happening was very low, it was still possible. This required Lin Ge to use extremely small movements to move to the path that the car was coming from. As long as he could successfully stay under the car, he would be covered by the engine and the car. Of course, if he did not find the right position, he would be crushed by the car. It was hard to say whether he would be crushed to death. However, if the people in the car were to be crushed by such a large obstacle, they would definitely notice. Moreover, Lin Ge could not make any big movements. He could only move like an ant to change his current position. Otherwise, he would be discovered. Lin Ge swore that this was definitely the most difficult 10 minutes of his life. Those people walked towards Lin Ge unhurriedly, while Lin Ge slowly moved his body horizontally, trying his best to aim at the bottom of the car in a straight line. Chapter 1834. The car and the mercenaries were getting closer and closer to Lin Ge. Lin Ge had goosebumps all over his body. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he was discovered. Would he be crushed to death by the car, or shot to death by random gunfire? Anything was possible. Lin Ge swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This was definitely the most unbearable period of his life. The sun had already set. In the open space of the forest, tall grass swayed in the wind as far as the eye could see. Lin Ge was leaning against the ground, listening to the approaching footsteps and the roar of the car engine. This was definitely the worst symphony he had ever heard in his life because his fate was right at the edge of a cliff. Once the symphony stopped, it would mean that he would face death. Finally, the car slowly drove over Lin Ji's head. The speed was so slow that it was almost no different from walking. The mercenaries on both sides of the car raised their heads and raised their guns. They didn't seem to notice that there was a dangerous intruder in the grassy area that the car drove over. Lin Ge tightly gripped the hilt of his dagger, which was covered in sweat. The moment the car's shadow covered his body, he felt a heavy weight lift off his heart. However, before Lin Ge could rejoice, the car suddenly stopped. As the engine died, a person shouted, and all the mercenaries stopped in their tracks. In an instant, Lin Ji's hair stood on end. His right hand that was gripping the dagger trembled. He was ready for a fierce battle at any time. The person in the car didn't say anything. The mercenaries didn't say anything either. Everyone was facing the car. Lin Ge was under the car. He could clearly see the pairs of strong and powerful legs, and the advanced weapons in their hands. There was really no way to fight. Lin Ge could see hundreds of legs at a glance. What could he use to fight? If he wanted to die, he had to take care of the person in the car before he died. That way his life wouldn't be in vain. At least he had to take care of the leader first. Even if he didn't have a good ending, he had to take care of the other party. But how was he going to take control of the leader in the car in the first place? Other than attacking from under the car, Lin Ge really couldn't think of a better way. However, if he knew that the leader in the car was surrounded by 3 experts, even if he could suddenly attack, he wouldn't be able to get the result he wanted. Lin Ge would definitely give up on this idea. I have already explained the mission very clearly, the leader in the car said. Everyone can see what I do. As long as everyone doesn't let me down, I will definitely let everyone down. There will definitely be difficulties. Catching one or a few people in such a big forest is really no different from finding a needle in a haystack. However, I still hope that everyone will be alert. Anyone who discovers the target, immediately release a signal flare. As long as everyone sees the signal flare, surround the target and lock it down. I will reward you according to your contribution. All the mercenaries listened very seriously. Everyone's expression was serious. Such a big matter obviously wasn't that simple. But the more difficult it was, the more benefits they could get. I will remind all of you again. Being greedy will only get you killed. We can't judge the strength of the other party, and we can't judge the number of people. Therefore, the signal flare must be your first choice. Don't think that you can take care of everything. If you don't release the signal flare because of your greed, even if anyone completes the mission, I will still only punish you and not reward you. These words were ruthless enough. All the mercenaries shouted that they understood. This really made Lin Ji's beating heart almost stop. It seemed that these people didn't stop because they found him. This made Lin Ge breathe a sigh of relief. But a more serious problem came. Who were these people trying to kill? 1. How many? Were they talking about him? Lin Ge couldn't judge. If these people were trying to catch him, then wouldn't he be like a lamb entering a wolf's den? The problem was that these wolves could King release the signal flare. The moment they met, they would use the big move summon a pack of wolves. Let alone Lin Ge who was a lamb. Even if Lin Ge was a dinosaur, he might be bitten to death by this pack of wolves. Lin Ge didn't have any confidence in his heart. Even if he wasn't the target, he wouldn't be able to explain himself in this kind of environment. He would die without a doubt. Phew. Today was destined to be Lin Ji's most unforgettable day. If a primary school student could have his experience, then writing an essay like My Most Unforgettable Day wouldn't be difficult to write. After the lecture, all the mercenaries dispersed. The car also started again. 2 people jumped out of the car and followed the mercenaries into the forest. This large grassland area suddenly became a lot more desolate. The car didn't drive as slowly as before and directly left. Although the smell of the exhaust wasn't pleasant, Lin Gu still took a few deep breaths. He wanted to keep his mind absolutely clear. He wanted to clearly tell himself that he must be focused. He must be focused. He must be focused. Now that he had entered the red alert area, he couldn't have any mishaps. At this point, there was no way back. Lin Gu could only choose to keep moving forward, deeper and deeper. Only by contacting Wen Xiao could he possibly escape the danger. After all, in this kind of place, a living guide and super helper like Wen Xiao was absolutely indispensable. Lin Gu was in such a dangerous place. He almost crawled through this grassland area. He had no other choice but to sneak to the coordinates Wen Xiao gave him. This was the only route he could take. The other routes were all monitored. It was normal that there were no hidden snipers in this place because this grassland area was too vast. No one would be stupid enough to sneak in here. However, Lin Gu really did choose this place to sneak in. It wasn't because he was stupid, but because he was skilled and daring. In the following period of time, Lin Gu even became very careful with his breathing. Ever since Uncle Xiang left, Wen Zhao's heart had been beating violently. Based on the situation and layout of the base, he had already determined the room with the communication signal monitoring device. If he wanted to contact Lin Gu, he had to first enter the room and turn off the device. He was sure that Uncle Xiang was carrying a device that was connected to the communication signal monitoring device. As long as he made a call, it would be equivalent to notifying Uncle Xiang. Uncle Xiang only needed to give an order, and a quarter of the mercenaries in the base would immediately surround him. At that time, he wouldn't be able to escape even if he had wings. After all, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. They were all mercenaries who had experienced the baptism of war, and they were all on high alert. No matter how powerful Wen Xiao was, it was impossible for him to overturn the situation here alone. The sky gradually darkened. Wen Xiao had been observing the situation of the patrolling team outside the window. He had to remember clearly every few minutes. Also, the mercenaries standing guard on the tower would make a small circle around the tower every 10 seconds. Wen Xiao had to calculate all of this. After figuring out the time, Wen Xiao could directly jump out of the window without anyone noticing the abnormality in his room. He used his fastest speed to hide under a load-bearing wooden pillar. After the mercenaries on the tower looked away, he quickly went to the room with the communication signal monitoring device and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" The moment the mercenary inside opened the door, Wen Xiao directly punched him in the chin. The mercenary's vision turned black and he fell to the ground. There was only one person in the room. This was probably Uncle Xiang's biggest mistake. Wen Xiao dragged the man into the room and closed the door. Then he pulled the fainted man onto a chair, making it look like he was just sleeping. Although the communication signal monitoring device wasn't complicated, Wen Xiao still carefully studied it before turning off the signal monitoring function step by step. After everything was done, Wen Zhao's head was already covered in sweat. However, this was just the beginning. Wen Xiao walked to the door and gently opened it. After looking outside and making sure that there was nothing out of the ordinary, he quickly took out his phone and dialed Lin Ji's number. Chapter 1835. Lin Gu was in such a dangerous situation. Even the vibration of his phone was enough to make him break out in a cold sweat. If he hadn't relied on the insects and spiders to replenish his energy, he would have been dead by now. Stress would overdraft a person's mental strength, and the energy source for mental strength was the most basic physical ability. Lin Gu knew that he was right to grit his teeth and eat those disgusting things. He really couldn't be picky about survival in the wild. Staying alive was more important than anything else. Being able to solve this big problem was more important than anything else. After picking up the phone, Lin Gu still didn't say anything. He couldn't tell what was wrong with Wen Xiao. That strange phone call from before had already confused him. And this time, Lin Gu still didn't dare to imagine what was going on the other end of the phone. Finally, after a minute of silence, Wen Xiao concluded that it was Lin Gu who picked up the phone. He directly said, "I'm in trouble." I've basically determined that Uncle Xiang is the one who cracked Vulture's email. He might know all the secrets. I'm now in his base. I need your support. Please answer if you copy. You dare to talk in someone else's base? Lin Ge whispered in surprise. But after speaking, he regretted it a little. What if there was someone else beside Wen Xiao? What if someone forced him to make this call? Thinking about his lack of consideration, Lin Ge was very upset. I've already turned off the communication signal monitor. Uncle Xiang also took most of the people out to do something important. Right now, there are less than 20 people in the base other than me. I need you to create chaos and create a diversion to give me enough space to escape, Wen Xiao said. Lin Ge heard and cursed. You're using me as bait. Anyway, he had already spoken. If Wen Xiao was being controlled by someone else, then that person already knew about his existence. Who cares? There was no turning back now. Without outside help, I really can't escape successfully, Wen Xiao said. I'm worried that I'll be exposed tonight. By then, I won't be able to escape even if I want to. I'm familiar with this place. I have to escape. When boss arrives, I'll be able to give him the correct guidance and solve this problem. Wen Zhao's words made sense. Lin Ge gritted his teeth and decided to go all out. After all, his mission was to assist Wen Xiao. This was a mission given to him by Su Yun. Regardless of whether he was willing to accept it or not, this mission was something he had to complete. Then tell me what I should do now. Lin Ge said, I'm getting closer to the target point. I'm already very close. When you discovered the base, the first thing you noticed was the people on the tower. Then there was a 3-man patrol team. These are all dangerous. Wen Xiao said, it would be best if you could cause some trouble in the southeast side of the base. I'm currently in the northwest side. I don't dare to act rashly because I can't tell if the people on the tower can see me from where I am. I need you to cause some trouble and attract their attention. Then, I'll escape from the northwest side. You'll meet me there. Lin Ge pondered for a moment, half believing and half doubting. Wen Xiao, your arrangement is indeed quite good, but you'd better listen carefully. If you're playing with me, then you've really found the wrong person. If you dare to betray me and work with them to deal with me, I'll drag you down with me as a scapegoat. Wen Xiao sighed softly. You still have the mood to doubt me at a time like this? We need the most basic trust to survive this disaster. I'm in a very dangerous situation right now. Can you stop being so suspicious? Your situation is dangerous? You only know that you're in danger. Have you ever thought that my situation is also very dangerous? Lin Ge glared at him and said, do you know how many mercenaries passed by me just now? Densely packed. A group. I was lying in the grass and was almost discovered and turned into a dice. If I wasn't smart enough to crawl in the path of the car ahead of time, and have the chance to hide under the car, you'd be talking to a ghost right now. Wen Xiao was shocked. Was it a Land Rover? How could I be in the mood to look at a car? I didn't even dare to raise my head up and down. Lin Ge said unhappily. They said they were going to catch someone and do a carpet search to catch someone. Are they going to catch me or not? God knows. Wen Xiao frowned. Those people must be Uncle Xiang's men, because this was Uncle Xiang's territory. No other mercenary group would dare to make such a big fuss in Uncle Xiang's territory. Uncle Xiang wanted to catch Lin Ge? How could that be? He couldn't possibly know about Lin Ji's existence. When he took his phone and was suspicious, he did call Lin Ge, but Lin Ge didn't say a word. Uncle Xiang had no reason to suspect him. There was no reason for him to make such a judgment. Just because of a suspicion, he brought so many people to do a carpet search? No, that was impossible. Wen Xiao knew very well that unless Uncle Xiang was sure that there was someone outside working with him, he wouldn't do such a thing. Otherwise, there would be other dangers if he caught someone else. You must be careful. Don't be discovered. Come and find me immediately. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. This place is too dangerous. Wen Xiao said, if you can guarantee your safety, come as fast as you can. I'll wait for you. Lin Ge hung up the phone and carefully observed his surroundings. If he wanted to guarantee his safety, he had to be careful. He couldn't be fast. If he wanted to be fast, he had to risk his life. Of course, Lin Ge wouldn't risk his life. No matter how dangerous Wen Zhao's place was, it wasn't as dangerous as his situation. Just like that, Lin Ge walked for more than 2 hours in just a few kilometers of distance. He finally arrived at the coordinates that Wen Zhao told him. He also saw the mercenaries' secret base. Obviously, this base wasn't as domineering as Lin Ge imagined. It was very simple. However, although a sparrow was small, it had all the essentials. Lin Ge immediately noticed the mercenaries on the tower. Now that the sky was completely dark, it was still very advantageous for him. Lin Ge lurked in the dark for half an hour. He calculated the frequency of the patrol team's appearance and the frequency of the mercenaries on the tower's observation. Lin Ge thought that this was a good opportunity. Lin Ge ignited a flame and then used a few seconds to escape tens of meters away. Immediately after, the mercenaries on the tower noticed the flame. They immediately raised their guns and aimed, shouting to remind their brothers in the base. The patrol team also arrived at the first moment. They all lay down and aimed. Before confirming the situation, no one dared to act rashly. Lin Ge waiting for the sound of an explosion. In order to create chaos, he picked up a few bullets when he passed by this place. After some processing by Lin Ge, the gunpowder was enough to create a certain explosive effect. Just as the mercenaries were about to realize that this was a trap, the fire exploded. Bang! This sound directly raised everyone's hearts to their throats. 222, a burst of bullets. When someone opened fire, everyone thought that they had found the target and began suppressing it with fire. Immediately after, another explosion sounded, directly raising the one-sided battle to a climax. Lin Ge quickly rushed to the northwest of the base under the protection of the darkness. Of course, he was also very careful because he could not completely trust Wen Zhao. The moment the first explosion sounded, Wen Zhao rushed out of the communications signal monitoring room and quickly fled to the northwest of the base. At this time, all the mercenaries were transferred to the southeast. No one realized that Wen Zhao had escaped. After escaping from the base, Wen Zhao sneaked into the darkness. When he saw Lin Ji's figure appear, he quickly rushed forward to meet up with him. This gave Lin Ge a fright, and he almost stabbed him a few times. Well done. Wen Zhao threw a sentence to Lin Ge. Follow me closely. We have to leave this place before Uncle Xiang's troops arrive. Otherwise, no one will be able to leave. Their reaction speed will be very fast. We have to race against time. You really don't want to let me take a breather? Lin Ge smiled bitterly. His mind had been tense all this time. This was too tiring. He really wanted to rest. Chapter 1836. If Uncle Xiang's men react, the two of us will be doomed, Wen Zhao said. I know what you're thinking, but it's still dangerous for the two of us to deal with the rest of them. We need to wait for the boss's support. Only then will we have a chance. Lin Ge grinned. They don't have a leader now. It's such a good opportunity to reduce their strength. If we don't seize it, wouldn't it be a pity? It won't be too late to leave after we finish this job, right? Wen Zhao shook his head and said firmly, what if it's too late? The information is in our hands. We have to ensure our safety. The information is in your hands. You just have to bring it out. Lin Ge said, since I spent so much effort to come here, it would be a waste if I don't make up for it. If you want to leave, you can leave. I'll stay and play with these trash. Lin Ji's confidence was not baseless. A small trick was enough to lure this group of people away. Obviously, most of these people did not know what it meant to use their brains. This was definitely a chance for Lin Ge to strike at his opponents. Moreover, he was hungry and wanted to get some food to fill his stomach. Wen Zhao wanted to say something, but Lin Ge had already entered the enemy's base. Wen Zhao was not careful and did not stop him. He was annoyed. He did not dare to shout for fear of startling the others. But he could not leave. This kind of dragon's pool and tiger's den was not something a person could escape easily. What was even more frightening was that once the mercenaries reacted and realized that he had left, they would definitely be alerted. By then, even if Lin Ge had great abilities, he would not be able to escape. This guy. What a hindrance. Wen Zhao was quite speechless. He had no organization and discipline at all. Wen Xiao was a soldier who paid attention to organization and discipline, whether it was in the Dragon Fury team or later when he led the One-Eyed Mercenary group in Southeast Asia. There was a world of difference between him and Lin Ge. Lin Ge wasn't a soldier, so he didn't have any concept of organization and discipline. If someone he admired ordered him to do something, he would definitely obey. But if someone else wanted him to do something, he would really depend on his mood. Right now, Lin Ge didn't want to listen to Wen Zhao's arrangements. Moreover, he knew that most of the people in the base had left. Of course, he didn't want to miss such a good opportunity. He was used to being alone in all his previous missions, so even if Wen Xiao didn't help him, he didn't think it was a big deal. Wen Xiao was so angry that he really wanted to abandon Lin Ge, but he really couldn't do it. No matter what, Lin Ge came here to save him. Now that Lin Ge was in danger, if he just left without a care, it would really be too disloyal. Damn it! Wen Xiao cursed, but he didn't leave. Instead, he followed closely behind Lin Ge and returned to the base. But once Uncle Xiang came back, things wouldn't be so simple. It was impossible that Uncle Xiang couldn't figure out the reason. How could there be a sudden fire and explosion outside Uncle Xiang's base? Someone must be behind it. Wen Xiao was the only outsider in the entire base. Who else could they suspect? In addition, the person in the communication signal monitoring room had already been knocked unconscious. The only suspicious person who would make a move on him was Wen Xiao. No matter what, Wen Xiao would be the first person to be suspected. In the dead of the night, Uncle Xiang would be informed of the explosion and fire immediately. Now that there was a problem, Uncle Xiang wouldn't need anyone to inform him. He would rush back immediately. It's over. Wen Xiao was very upset. He really didn't understand what Lin Ge was thinking. He also regretted being stupid enough to come back with him. If he knew that he would be completely surrounded, he would have just left Lin Ge here alone. Who asked him to be so arrogant? I don't think I need your protection. You should figure out what's going on. Wen Xiao said, I'm Uncle Xiang's friend. I have an obligation to help you if you need it. We just need you to stay here safely. The other person's answer was also very clear. He didn't give Wen Xiao a chance to find an excuse. But I remember Uncle Xiang said that if there's a problem in the base, I should help him. Wen Zhao's question was also very firm. Are you going to go against Uncle Xiang's wishes? Facing Wen Xiao, the burly mercenary was speechless for a moment. Wen Xiao continued to guide him. This is Uncle Xiang's territory. Who do you think dares to cause trouble in Uncle Xiang's territory alone? Uncle Xiang took so many brothers out. The problem in the southeast just now might be an opportunity for someone to use this opportunity to set you up. If you can't prevent a big mess from happening, how can you face Uncle Xiang? After all, the leader of the One-Eyed Mercenary group was very famous in the Southeast Asian mercenary circle. Everyone was very clear about his strength and ability. Now that he asked these questions, it was really possible that they were aware of it. At this time, no one cared about the kitchen at all. Lin Ge was also very disappointed in the kitchen because the meal was really too ordinary. Although there were meat, eggs, and vegetables, wasn't it too monotonous? There was no variety at all. Lin Ge, who was hungry, didn't care so much. He didn't want to go out later and eat those big spiders or ants to satisfy his hunger. He wanted to eat until he was full. After he left their territory, he would catch a wild rabbit and roast it. If he ate a big reptile, he would really vomit. Chapter 1837. And on such an extremely urgent night, Su Yun also led the brothers of the Dragon's Fury Special Forces to parachute into the military airport of the Border Police Brigade. In order to save time, the sharp-tongued but soft-hearted Wan Guangxiao specially approved a special plane to send Su Yun and the others directly from Yanjing to the border area of the Southern Kingdom. For the sake of Wan Guangxiao's support, Su Yun and the brothers of the Dragon Fury team couldn't let the old man down. They were bound to strangle the Southeast Asian mercenary group that uncovered the secret of Guoguo's identity and directly reduced the risk to the minimum. The Border Defense Police Brigade only received the notice to welcome them and send them to the border line. The other things were under the command of Su Yun. and the significance of their border mission was extraordinary. To a certain extent, it was somewhat unprincipled. After all, they were fighting outside the border, and the opponent was a mercenary group that didn't dare to easily provoke Huasia's border. Although that area was a place that no Southeast Asian country was willing to manage, it wasn't Huasia's land. Therefore, their border mission didn't represent the country. It was completely under the personal leadership of Su Yun. All the symbols of the country on their combat uniforms would be removed, and everything they did had nothing to do with the country. Of course, they had to carry these advanced weapons and equipment with them. It was definitely not a smart choice to fight with well-equipped mercenaries barehanded. In addition to excellent equipment and abundant ammunition, once they left the border, they wouldn't receive any assistance or long-range help. The Border Defense Police Brigade was quite respectful and admiring of Su Yun and the other Special Forces members. With their cooperation, Su Yun led the 6 brothers of Dragon's Fury overnight to the border coordinates that Lin Ge had informed him of. The captain of the Border Defense Police Brigade was very surprised when he learned of the coordinates. He immediately reminded Su Yun, "This border crossing point is a very dangerous minefield. Even desperate drug traffickers almost won't cross the border in this area. The mortality rate is too high. Even if there's no one around, it will cause an explosion for some special reason. This minefield is the no man's land in the entire border area. Then this place could really be considered a no man's land within a no man's land." Who knew why Wen Xiao and Lin Ge would choose such a place to exit the border? However, Su Yun and Lin Ge had an agreement. He needed to find the signals and imprints left behind by Lin Ge to make a temporary judgment. They had an agreement before that they couldn't casually contact each other, because no one knew the other's situation. If they rashly contacted each other, it was very likely that the originally hidden party would be exposed, bringing unnecessary danger to their own people. For this reason, Su Yun had to lead Dragon's Fury's brothers through this minefield. Fortunately, the brothers who came with him were not afraid of trouble. Some of them were even more excited when there was danger. "Isn't it just a minefield? We've been through too many minefields in our lives." Qianfeng grinned. "Aren't my legs fine now? As long as he was careful, he would be able to get through it. Wen Xiao and Lin Ge are fine. How can this be a problem for us?" "Be humble," Hanzhan said. "Wen Xiao has lived in Southeast Asia for so long. He may have more experience in this area than us. Since the captain reminded us, it means that this place is quite dangerous. Don't be too arrogant. It's easy to get into trouble." Qianfeng stuck out his tongue, but he was not convinced and looked at Hua Xiaolu and the others, trying to get their support. However, Hua Xiaolu pretended not to see anything and did not respond to Qianfeng. Gong Sunlong only secretly gave a thumbs up to show his support for Qianfeng. Qianfeng and Bai Songguang were originally more obedient, and they would not support Qianfeng's troublesome idea. "Forget it, I'll be careful behind you." Qianfeng waved his hand. "Your life is not so worthless. If you die in a minefield, it will be too much of a loss for you." Su Yun smiled and patted Qianfeng's shoulder. It was good to be confident, but this confidence should not become arrogance. "It's better to be careful. Your brother Black Dragon's warning is not wrong." Qianfeng nodded modestly. "Yes, I will not let Brother Black Dragon down. Since we have brought you to the place, the rest is up to you." The captain of the border police force saluted. "I wish you a safe journey. Be careful when you leave the border. Those mercenaries are really not simple. Thank you for your concern." Su Yun also saluted back. "We will not disappoint you." After the border police force retreated, Su Yun and the others began to prepare to cross the minefield. They matched the time with each other and checked their weapons to see if there were any problems. With a wave of Su Yun's hand, the 7 people entered the minefield in a battle formation. Su Yun and Hanzhan took the lead. The 2 of them were more mature, and they did things more cautiously and carefully. Although the guys behind them were no longer the young boys they were in the past, Su Yun and Hanzhan were still used to protecting them behind as brothers when they encountered such dangerous situations. These were all invisible love and care. The few little brothers who were often taken care of were really grateful for Su Yun and Hanzhan's actions from the bottom of their hearts. Under the night sky, A few black shadows were like ghosts. Although it was a minefield, their speed was not slow at all. Su Yin knew very well what time meant. In order to buy time for them, the chief even arranged for a plane to be airdropped directly to the border area. If they wasted time, it would be really shameful. As it turned out, the concept of time did ensure that they did not fall into a disadvantage in the following confrontation. Because at this time, the fire and explosion in the base had disturbed Uncle Xiang. Uncle Xiang immediately ordered everyone to retreat and surround his base from the outside. Today he mobilized everyone. On the surface, it was to conduct a large-scale search to see if there were any people around the base who were cooperating with Wen Xiao. In fact, he wanted Wen Xiao to lead the people who were cooperating with him inside the base, so that he could catch a turtle in a jar. Some people could not understand. When Uncle Xiang used Wen Xiao's phone to call Lin Ge did not speak at all. Why was Uncle Xiang so sure that Wen Xiao must have external help? It was very simple. Although Lin Ge did not speak, a kind of bird in the jungle betrayed Lin Ge. At that time, a flock of birds was disturbed by something and flew up. A few of them were frightened, and even let out a bird cry. This kind of bird cry was very special. Only a kind of bird in the jungles of Southeast Asia could make this kind of sound. This kind of bird did not exist in the mainland of Huaxia. Therefore, Uncle Xiang concluded that the person on the other end of the phone was within his sphere of influence. However, an old fox was an old fox after all. He was able to realize the problem at the first moment, and was able to control his actions at the first moment. Uncle Xiang pretended that nothing had happened and pretended that he had been fooled. This was to encourage Wen Xiao to be bolder in contacting his outsider, and then give him this opportunity to catch a turtle in a jar. In this battle of wits and courage, Wen Xiao was still a little inexperienced, and Lin Ge, who had never dealt with Uncle Xiang, naturally underestimated him. He did not think that he had been lured into a big trap step by step. At this moment, Lin Ge was still replenishing his food and water, preparing for the upcoming escape and fierce battle. The mercenaries led by Uncle Xiang had already surrounded his base, and were waiting to catch Wen Xiao and his outsider in one fell swoop. Uncle Xiang dared to swagger back to the base because he was certain that Wen Xiao and his outsider must be trapped in the base at this moment. Of course, there was also the possibility that they had all escaped. When Uncle Xiang saw that his brothers who stayed behind to guard the base were closely watching Wen Xiao, he knew that none of them could escape. Tonight's winner could only be him. "Wen, sorry to have frightened you." Uncle Xiang jumped out of the car and walked straight to Wen Xiao. Wen Xiao was already panicking. Uncle Xiang came back too quickly and too suddenly. He had already realized a problem. Everything that happened today could be a trap, and they had already stepped into this trap. At this point, Wen Xiao really did not have the power to change anything. He could only hope that Lin Ge could escape with his super strong personal ability. If he had to die, only he would die. He did not want everyone to die here. Chapter 1838. Faced with Uncle Xiang who was pressing him, Wen Xiao could not think of any reason to continue pretending. "Thank you for your concern, Uncle Xiang. I'm fine. It's just that. Uncle Xiang, didn't you go out to do something important? Why did you suddenly come back? You didn't delay your important matters, did you?" "As expected of my good brother. Even at this time, you're still concerned about my important matters." Uncle Xiang grinned and said, "Ha ha ha, my matters are trivial and not worth mentioning at all. Brother One-Eyed, your matters are more important." "Me?" Wen Xiao was startled and said with a blank face, "I'm fine." Behind Uncle Xiang, Ding Kai, Jing Chu and Tian Lu, these three experts had already formed a circle around Wen Xiao. Uncle Xiang shrugged his shoulders and said, "One-Eyed bro, I'm afraid you've already figured out everything you need to know. Has the person in the communication signal monitoring room been knocked out by you?" While Uncle Xiang was speaking, his subordinates had already gone to confirm. Sure enough, the person inside had already been carried out unconscious. "If we continue like this, neither of us will get the answer we want. Why don't we just be frank?" Uncle Xiang said, "This is my home ground. Everyone here is my people. Even if you have a team, Do you think you can escape from me? Uncle Xiang, I don't understand what you're talking about. Wen Xiao would not admit anything until the very last moment, unless Uncle Xiang agreed to it first. Otherwise, he would have to pretend to be a fool until the very last moment. He had no way to determine whether Uncle Xiang was testing him or tricking him. Uncle Xiang laughed again. He walked to Wen Xiao's side and said in a low voice that only Wen Xiao could hear, "One-eyed, you really won't give up until you see the Yellow River. You won't shed tears until you see the coffin. If I don't say it, you'll keep holding on to your wishful thinking, right? Fine, I will make it clear. I know all the secrets in Vulture's mailbox. Not only do I know that you almost died a few days ago and became a cripple, I also know that you could recover so fast because of the nourishment of a piece of Pobo jade, which was worn by Zixahoya people for a long time." After everything was made clear, Wen Xiao also realized that he really couldn't continue pretending, but he still had a trick up his sleeve. "Uncle Xiang, I came to you to talk about this matter, but you haven't given me a chance. I don't know how to make you believe me, so forget it. Don't keep up the pretense." Uncle Xiang sneered and continued to speak in a low voice. "One-eyed, although I don't know your personality well, I know very well what the secret of the Zixahoya tribe and Pobo you signifies. It signifies absolute power and absolute rule. No one would be willing to share this kind of secret. You came to me because you were worried that I would find out about this secret and wanted to make a move on me. Do you think it's possible? Me alone to make a move on you?" Wen Xiao raised his hands speechlessly and said, "I one-eyed, really don't think I have the ability to do that." Uncle Xiang said indifferently, "So besides you, you have a helper. And this guy is probably in the base now. Otherwise, you would have escaped long ago, right?" Lin Ge, who was in the kitchen, had goosebumps all over his body. When this guy called Uncle Xiang appeared, he knew that it was this guy who led so many people to sweep the grassland area today. This voice was too familiar. And he could come back so quickly. Obviously, he had set a trap for them. Originally, they didn't need to jump into this dangerous situation, but because of his willfulness, Wen Xiao was also trapped. Hiss. Lin Ge took a breath of cold air. If this matter was messed up because of him, how could he face Su Yin? Damn it. Lin Ge was angry with himself. If he had to choose again, he would definitely choose to listen to Wen Xiao. Perhaps they would have already escaped from the encirclement. Perhaps Wen Xiao hated him to death now? On the contrary, Wen Xiao really didn't blame Lin Ge at all now. With the speed of Uncle Xiang's encirclement, it was obvious that he had been prepared. Even if they didn't return to the base at that time and chose to escape, they would have been intercepted by Uncle Xiang's people halfway. At that time, they would probably have fought directly. Then their ending wouldn't be any different from now. Most of them would have died. They wouldn't even have the chance to talk like now. At least now, Wen Xiao hoped to use himself to stall for time and let Lin Ge think of a good way to escape. Although even Wen Xiao himself felt that this was a fantasy, he still had hope because this was his only hope. He had no other way. "One-eyed, you are really a very, very good speaker." Uncle Xiang smiled and patted One-eye's shoulder. Although he was standing beside One-eyed, he wasn't worried that One-eyed would attack him at all. Uncle Xiang was still very confident in his own strength. "It's a pity that the person you met is me, and I especially hate speakers." At this moment, Wen Xiao could only smile bitterly. "If you and your people had the strength to fight with me, you wouldn't have to stall for time in front of me." Uncle Xiang said, "Are you regretting it now? It's a pity. There's no medicine for regret in this world." Wen Xiao swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "Uncle Xiang, you have already started to suspect me, so no matter what I say, it's meaningless. You can kill me or torture me as you wish. I'm here to ask for cooperation. If Uncle Xiang insists on doing things your way, I have nothing to say." Uncle Xiang shook his head. "You know I won't kill you because I still have some things to figure out. But I'm afraid I won't let the person with you go unless you let him out now. We might still be able to sit down and talk for a while. Who knows, I might change my mind." Wen Xiao smiled bitterly. "It's a pity that there's really no one here, only me. Wen Xiao, I want to see how stubborn your mouth is." Uncle Xiang's voice started to turn cold. He waved his hand fiercely and ordered everyone, Search. Kill without mercy. In the kitchen, Lin Ge heard this and immediately took out his dagger. He cursed in his heart. Isn't this old bastard too cruel? Kill without mercy? Fine. Then I'll let you know that I'm not someone to be trifled with. I'll break even if I kill one today, and I'll make a profit if I kill two today. Let's see who's the one who'll lose in the end. Wait. When Xiao finally couldn't take it anymore, Uncle Xiang's order had been issued, and it was really an order to kill without mercy. He didn't dare to gamble with Lin Ji's life. If anything happened to Lin Ge, he wouldn't have the face to face Su Yun. Lin Ji's heart skipped a beat. Is this guy going to give me an explanation? But even if he admitted that there was someone here, Lin Ge didn't dare to believe that he wouldn't be killed on the spot when he went out. One-eyed, a wise man submits to circumstances. I don't need to teach you such a simple principle. Uncle Xiang smiled faintly. You know what you should do. Let your friends come out. If we face each other face to face, then we're friends. If you hide, then you'll really be a scoundrel. Hearing this, Lin Ge couldn't take it anymore. I'll be caught sooner or later. I'm a man of steel, so I can't be called a scoundrel. Clang. Lin Ge kicked open the kitchen door with one foot. He sneered. Who are you calling a scoundrel? I'm just a little hungry, so I came here to have some supper. You're so *king stingy. You want to use so many people to deal with me for supper? Humph, I think you're the scoundrel with no guts. Lin Ji's sarcastic words were directed at Uncle Xiang. In an instant, all the mercenaries aimed their weapons at Lin Ge. As long as Uncle Xiang gave the order, even if Lin Ge was an immortal, he would be shot to pieces in an instant. Uncle Xiang, Wen Xiao shouted. If you want to know the secrets of this matter, then don't act rashly. Otherwise, I won't help you. This condition was very good, and also very threatening. Uncle Xiang smiled and gestured for everyone to put down their guns. He smiled at Lin Ge. Young people have courage, but impulsiveness is the devil. You're lucky this time. Lin Ji's face was full of disdain, and he snorted lightly. Chapter 1839. One-eye, your friend has character, but I'm not interested in him, Uncle Xiang said. What I want to talk about the most right now is how do you want to help me? How can you help me? You should know what I mean. I'm afraid this is the only reason why we can still stand together and talk. Uncle Xiang, I remember you always say that as long as you're worthy of yourself, you'll be worthy of others. Wen Xiao said indifferently. This matter has nothing to do with my friend. If you let him go, I'll be worthy of you. Uncle Xiang shook his head rudely and pointed at his temple. Do you think it's possible? Is it realistic? Wen-eye, you're not a brainless person. How can I let someone who knows this secret leave so casually? Even you, do you think you can leave? Lin Ge wasn't as polite as Wen Xiao. He said unhappily, if you want to stop me, you'll have to pay a price. Have you ever heard of the phrase, the loss outweighs the gain? Young man, don't be so arrogant. Uncle Xiang glanced at Lin Ge casually. I'm afraid you can't even pass this old man's test. Don't talk about conditions with me. Lin Ge really had the impulse to fight. He really wanted to see what kind of ability this Uncle Xiang had. Fortunately, Wen Xiao quickly stopped Lin Ge. If they really fought, Lin Ge really couldn't be Uncle Xiang's opponent. Although Uncle Xiang was old, he had absolute strength. After all, he was an expert of the profound world realm. Wen Xiao and Lin Ge really couldn't be Uncle Xiang's opponent. Even Wen Xiao, who had sold himself to the inner demon at that time, couldn't be sure that he could win against Uncle Xiang. Nobody in this area didn't know Uncle Xiang's strength. The mercenaries who could withstand 3 moves from him were all experts in the mercenary world. Uncle Xiang, give me a chance. Wen Xiao said. That depends on how you prove it to me. Uncle Xiang said. However, this person, I still have to lock him up first. Lin Ge naturally wouldn't allow himself to be captured without putting up a fight. Just as the 2 mercenaries behind Lin Ge were about to take him down, Lin Ge immediately retaliated. Sometimes a person's strength needed to be displayed. Otherwise, the other party would never treat you as anything. When Lin Ge defeated the 2 of them with just 2 moves, Uncle Xiang was quite surprised. After all, It was not easy to have such strength at such a young age. It seemed that he had really underestimated the young man who was with Wen Xiao. The moment Lin Ge made his move, Tianlu realized that none of the other mercenaries here were a match for this young man. Therefore, without waiting for the others to embarrass themselves, Tianlu grabbed Lin Ji's face. Yo! This speed was on a completely different level from the two people just now. Lin Gu exclaimed in his heart. It seemed that Uncle Xiang really had some capable people under him. At least the guy who attacked him wasn't simple. His explosive power and speed weren't inferior to his own. Lin Ge didn't dare to let his guard down. He fought Tianlu with all his strength. He wanted to see how capable Uncle Xiang's people were. However, Wen Xiao didn't let the battle continue. After Lin Ge counterattacked, he directly stood between the two of them. Enough! We're all on the same side. Why do you have to make things difficult for each other? Who's on the same side as him? If you think you're on the same side as them, then that's your problem. Don't drag me into it. Lin Ge didn't give him any face at all. I didn't say that. It was your one-eyed friend who said it himself. Uncle Xiang was completely enraged by Lin Ji's arrogance. Before Wen Xiao could react, Uncle Xiang personally attacked. Perhaps no one had seen Uncle Xiang attack in the past 10 years. Basically, the 3 tigers under his command could help him solve all his problems cleanly and clearly. But this time he actually attacked personally. Moreover, his speed was on a completely different level from Tianlu's. Lin Ge didn't even see clearly when he attacked. He was already enveloped by the wind from Uncle Xiang's fist. Even though Lin Ge had reflexively raised his hands to block the attack, he was still pushed back several meters by Uncle Xiang's punch. What terrifying strength! Lin Ge was shocked. He didn't expect this old man's strength to be so much higher than his own by a level. He couldn't possibly be this old man's opponent at all. After Uncle Xiang's punch, he followed up with a palm strike. Lin Ge couldn't react in time. His left shoulder was injured. A tearing pain made Lin Ge grit his teeth and take a few steps back. Only then did he manage to disperse the aftershock of the palm strike. Although Lin Ge hadn't fallen to the point where he couldn't defend himself, at this rate, he could only take a beating and run away. There was no possibility of fighting back. After Wen Xiao reacted, he quickly stood in front of Lin Ge. He had to control this guy's impulse. Otherwise, before Su Yin arrived, Lin Ge would die in Uncle Xiang's hands. Because Wen Xiao was too clear about Uncle Xiang's strength. He was a genuine Earth-profound realm expert. How could Lin Ge resist him? Uncle Xiang, I beg you. Give me some face. Wen Xiao said. No matter what you want to know, I will tell you everything I know. Give me some face. Uncle Xiang said coldly. I just want to let him know that there's always someone better than him. Young man, don't be too arrogant. Sooner or later you'll fall. Lin Ji's mouth was really stubborn. Even in this situation, he still didn't give in. I'm usually modest, but I can't stand pretentious people. What's so great about it? You've eaten more than me for a few decades and have more skills. If you have the guts, just kill me. You shut up. Wen Xiao was about to collapse. Lin Ge was too reckless. Uncle Xiang was the leader of the largest mercenary group in Southeast Asia. Killing people was really a normal thing for him. Uncle Xiang did have the intention to kill Lin Ge. Of this he was sure of it. But at this time, he might really have to give Wen Xiao some face. I left his life for him. Does he have to leave something for me? Uncle Xiang snorted. One-eyed, today I'll give you this face. But only this once. Come, put this kid in the water prison. I want to see how stubborn his mouth is. Lin Ge obviously didn't want to and wanted to fight back. But this time, the people who came to deal with him were Tianlu and Jing Chu, 2 experts. Lin Ge really didn't have the strength to break free from the 2. At the same time, there were guns aimed at Lin Ji's head. Lin Ge didn't want to lie down like a corpse. Soon Lin Ge was brought to the water prison that Uncle Xiang mentioned. This kind of water prison seemed to be available in all the major mercenary bases in Southeast Asia. Because their captives were usually mercenary experts, it was very difficult to control them in a normal cage. Therefore there was a water prison. It was a deep cellar filled with cold water, and sealed with reinforced steel. The people in the water had to constantly step on the water to be able to breathe. This kind of water prison would constantly drain the person's strength and make it impossible to escape. Also, it was very difficult for people to use their strength in the water, so even experts couldn't easily break free. Uncle Xiang's water prison design was even more ingenious. Once the iron gate of the water prison was opened, it would affect the iron bars under the water. And on the other side of the iron bars, there were two giant crocodiles with stinky mouths. As long as the lock wasn't opened according to the password, the two crocodiles would definitely be released into the water prison. If the crocodiles swam over, the people in the water prison didn't have any weapons and couldn't escape. In the narrow space, it was almost impossible to deal with the two giant crocodiles with bare hands. Lin Ge was pushed into the water prison, and the iron gate was locked. He could only try his best to keep his body afloat while using as little strength as possible. Very quickly, Lin Ge smelled the stench of the crocodiles' mouths. Damn. Wasn't this a little too much for him to handle? Lin Ge didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was too much. Being locked up in such a dangerous place, Lin Ge didn't even know if he could survive. The crocodiles next door seemed to have smelled the human scent, and began to madly ram against the iron bars that separated the two bodies of water. Although they didn't succeed, Lin Ge still broke out in cold sweat in this ice-cold water prison, because he really didn't know how he could resolve the crisis if these two beasts broke through. Chapter 1840. Hey, you're just going to leave me here? You might as well kill me. Can you hear me? Lin Ge shouted angrily in the water prison. Unfortunately, he didn't get any reply. The only response he got was the sound of the two ferocious crocodiles crazily hitting the iron bars. Clang, clang, every hit was accompanied by the impact of water waves. Lin Ge's mental state was a little hysterical. Wasn't this a little too much? That was enough. Why was there no end to it? He obviously wanted to learn more secrets from Wen Xiao, yet he still played this game with him. Lin Ge didn't understand. The more dangerous his situation was, the more passive Wen Xiao would be in front of Uncle Xiang. The more passive Wen Xiao was, the more dangerous his situation would be. This was a vicious cycle, and it was definitely not their current advantage. Lin Ge overestimated their bargaining chip to know Guoguo's secret. In Uncle Xiang's eyes, even without their help, as long as it was something he wanted, he would definitely get it. Now that he had the two of them, they were just two more chess pieces that he could use. They weren't people that Uncle Xiang couldn't let go of. That was why Lin Ge was heartlessly thrown into the water prison. These actions could even be said to be killing the chicken to warn the monkey. It was to let Wen Xiao see that they were definitely not that important in East Xiang's eyes. He should never think too highly of himself and act too self-righteous in front of him. He could throw them away at any time. Wen Xiao now understood the whole thing clearly. He absolutely believed that if he was stupid enough to go against Uncle Xiang, the consequences would be unimaginable. Whether Lin Ge could keep his life now depended on how he could gain Uncle Xiang's trust. Uncle Xiang, this old fox, really lived up to his name. One-eyed, you know I don't have much patience. Just give me a quick answer. Uncle Xiang was also chasing after Wen Xiao. Information was of utmost importance at any time. Wen Xiao met Uncle Xiang's gaze and said lightly, "The Zixahoya is a little girl. She should still be in the Suang area. However, she's heavily protected. It's definitely not that easy to get close to her. Uncle Xiang, if you want to get that little girl from Zixahoya clan and Pobo Jade, you really need my brother and my help. Both of us have seen that little girl before, but none of your other brothers have seen her before, so we don't have a target." Uncle Xiang's expression was a little cold. "One-eyed, if you still want to lie to me at this time, I won't be polite to you. You know that there are two pets that often don't get food next to my water prison. You don't want to watch your brothers to become my pet's dinner, right? Uncle Xiang, why should I lie to you? I'm to say it." Wen Xiao opened his eyes wide and said, "You can't rely on your own intuition to determine the truth of what I said. How can I joke with you at a time like this?" "One-eyed, I believe you when you say that this Zixahoya is a little girl. I also believe you when you say that this little girl has many people protecting her. I believe you even more when you say that you and your brother have seen this Zixahoya girl. Uncle Xiang said, but I definitely don't believe you when you say that this Zixahoya girl is still in Suang. Wen Xiao was stunned. Was this old thing's intuition so accurate? This was the only place he had lied about. He was worried that Uncle Xiang would arrange for his men in Huaxia to find Guogua, so he made up a place where Guogua was in Suang. However, this place should be very convincing. Because when Xiao died in Suang, Uncle Xiang had no reason to not believe that the Zixahoya girl was in Suang. Why? Could it be that this old fox was a living lie detector? Wen Xiao had no temper at all. He waited in shock for Uncle Xiang to give him a reason not to believe him. Indeed, this Zixahoya girl might have been kidnapped by Vulture and brought to Suang, but now that Vulture is dead, she can't still be in Suang. Uncle Xiang said, that's because you're recuperating on Guqin Island. If I remember correctly, you're at Guqin Island City Hospital. Since you've admitted that your injuries were healed by Paboyu, then this Zuhoya girl must have come to Guqin Island too. Uncle Xiang's analysis was very cautious. So you can conclude that this Zixahoya girl's location must be Guqin Island. No matter if she's still there or not, you should tell me that she's in Guqin Island and not Suang. One-eyed. How can I believe you? When Xiao needed an explanation, he had to give a reasonable explanation. Uncle Xiang, let me finish. I dare to say that the Zixahoya girl is in Suang because I know she went there. And she had to go. Do you know why Vulture died in Suang? Because Paboya was in Suang, that's why he went there. Now that my condition has improved, Paboya naturally needs to be put back. Uncle Xiang suddenly frowned. This was indeed a question that he hadn't thought of. At this moment he couldn't make sense of it and fell into a state of confusion. One-eyed, Pobo Jade only has that kind of magical power when worn by the Zixahoya tribesmen. If it's not worn by the Zixahoya people, then it's useless. In other words, the real Zixahoya person is not necessarily the little girl that Vulture lost his life for, but someone else who lives in seclusion in Suang. Wen Xiao was speechless after Uncle Xiang's analysis. It seems that when a person's thinking is too meticulous, when a person's thinking is too complicated, it is not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes if you think too much, you will get yourself into trouble. This was Uncle Xiang's current situation. He was afraid that he had really gotten himself into trouble. Uncle Xiang had already complicated a simple matter, and he did not need Wen Xiao's guidance at all. This really made Wen Xiao heave a sigh of relief. At least in this situation, he did not need to say or do anything. He just needed to follow Uncle Xiang's lead, and let him figure it out himself. So the water here is really deep. Uncle Xiang thought too much. In the end, even he himself felt that it was a little unbelievable. One-eyed, I wonder if you and Vulture have figured out who the real Zixahoya person is. Vulture's death was really not worth it. Hearing Uncle Xiang's words, Wen Xiao naturally wouldn't argue. He shook his head blankly. No. Could it all be a trap? Uncle Xiang thought too much and felt that his head was about to explode. I don't want to hear anything now. I just want to be alone and think about it quietly. One-eyed, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you. Wen Xiao was startled. He did not understand what Uncle Xiang meant. In this small temple of mine, other than the water prison, I really don't know where else you can stay. Uncle Xiang said faintly. Since you care about your brother, then go accompany him. It won't be too late for us to talk about it tomorrow after I figure this out. Uncle Xiang, you don't have to treat me like an outsider, right? Wen Xiao did not want to end up like Lin Ge, and he could not resist because of Lin Ge. Uncle Xiang pointed at his head. I'm sorry, one-eyed brother. I just hope that this thing on my neck can stay there for a few more years. I'm sorry. Yes. There is indeed no trust. Wen Xiao smiled. In that case, I won't make things difficult for Uncle Xiang. If you want me to go to the water prison, I'll go to the water prison. I'll bring this sincerity to Uncle Xiang. I hope Uncle Xiang will understand tomorrow. If you had brought your brother with you when you first came, I'm afraid there wouldn't be any doubt between us. Uncle Xiang did not give Wen Xiao any face. If we could work together, we would still be friends. The corners of Wen Xiao's mouth curled up, revealing a silent smile. Then he straightened up and allowed Ding Kai and Jing Chu to lead him to the water dungeon. With these two watching over him, Uncle Xiang was not worried at all. He went back to his room by himself. He had to think things through tonight. Chapter 1841. When Wen Xiao was also locked up in the water dungeon, Lin Ge couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. I didn't think you were so kind before, but now I realize that you're quite particular. If you're loyal enough, we'll be brothers in the future. Let's think of a way to leave together. Lin Ge, I'll tell you very seriously now that I'm a very particular person. I also know what loyalty is. Wen Xiao said. But I'm not stupid enough to come to this place to accompany you for loyalty. The reason I let them lock me up in this water dungeon is because of your lack of calm. Do you understand what I mean? I know. You're blaming me for not running with you. Otherwise, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Lin Ge waved his hand, and the water rippled. I know it's because of me. You don't have to remind me anymore. But if it were you, after eating bugs, spiders, and ants for a day, you wouldn't want to leave even if you saw the kitchen. Wen Xiao shook his head. No, even if we left, we couldn't have escaped. This is a big trap that Uncle Xiang dug. He was waiting for me to fish you in here and catch you in one fell swoop. He's much more difficult to deal with than we thought. We were too careless. You can't blame the fox for being too cunning when you go hunting without success. Lin Ge really didn't know how to shirk responsibility. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame the hunter for not being focused enough. The initiative should have been in our hands, but now it seems that we don't have any initiative at all. Instead, we're very passive. What initiative do you still want? Wen Xiao said. It's already very lucky that he didn't kill you. Lin Ge, Uncle Xiang is scarier than we thought. He won't be controlled by anyone. Even if we have very, very important clues in our hands that can help him, he won't be controlled by us. You can't use this as a bargaining chip. So that old fox is really a tough guy. He knows that it's more reliable to rely on his own two hands than on anyone else. Lin Ge mocked himself. Stop calling him Uncle Xiang. You're making it sound like you're close to him. It's affecting my judgment of you. Wen Xiao was speechless. I've already been locked up in this water prison to suffer with you. Why are you still so suspicious? It's just a joke. Do you have to go so far? Lin Ge said. All right, don't be angry. Think of a way to open the lock on the top. If we soak in the water for a night, we'll be swollen, right? Wen Xiao was not in the mood to joke with Lin Ge. Their current situation was too dangerous, and there was one very important point. They really had no way of leaving, because this lock had a mechanism that required a key to open. Otherwise, the two smelly beasts next door would be released. Although it was now 2 against 2, the two of them were not completely helpless against the crocodiles. But in this space where there was no place to hide, and they were unarmed, it was still very difficult to deal with the 2 giant crocodiles. Even if the 2 of them had a pair of iron fists, the power in the water would be greatly affected. It was simply impossible to rely on fists to solve the problem. This lock is connected to the iron bars between us and the crocodiles. Wen Xiao said, I dare say that the only key that can open the lock has already been personally delivered to Uncle Xiang by that guy called Ding Kai. I don't have any objections to using force, but first you have to tell me how you can stop those 2 crocodiles. If you have the ability, we can give it a try. Lin Ge pondered for a while, and finally shook his head. It was better to forget it. In this space, he really had no way to stop the 2 crocodiles. There was simply no way to buy time for Wen Xiao to open the lock. When the time came, the sound in the water would be so loud that it would definitely disturb the others. If they were discovered that they wanted to escape, then they would really face death. Think of a way. This won't work. Lin Ge shook his head. Wen Xiao laughed bitterly. You're finally willing to use your brain. You know that this won't solve the problem. I thought you would really agree. Do you think I'm stupid? Lin Ge rolled his eyes at Wen Xiao. Let's hurry up. I ate a lot of beef before I got into the water, and I even drank a few mouthfuls of white wine in the kitchen. I have enough calories. You probably didn't even eat anything, right? How long can you last? Wen Xiao raised his head and looked at the iron cage. Don't worry, I won't die from soaking in the water for a night. In a place like this, there's no way we can get out without anyone outside to help us. At this moment, Wen Xiao suddenly missed the black dog. If the black dog Barton was here, it would definitely not see him like this. Unfortunately, Uncle Xiang had already predicted this. When he first arrived here, the black dog was sent out by Uncle Xiang. Out of all the people around Uncle Xiang was the only one Wen Xiao could trust. He was also the only one who would think from Wen Xiao's perspective and could help Wen Xiao. But now, there was no one who could help them. You're giving up just like that? Lin Ge was stunned. Don't. You've lived here for so long. Can't you even handle such a small matter? You make it sound so easy for such a small matter. Wen Xiao sighed. This matter is not as simple as you think. We don't even have a single helper. I've been emphasizing that we have to work together from the inside out, because I was afraid this would happen. Now we're both useless. Lin Ge shrugged. If my brother knew about this, he'd be disappointed. Wen Xiao suddenly had a glimmer of hope. Do you think boss has already arrived? What are you thinking? You calculate the time. If he wants to go to Yanjing to ask for help, and then rush here from Yanjing, it's at least 3,500 kilometers in a straight line, right? Lin Ge smiled bitterly. Unless he's driving a plane, it's already good enough that he's able to pass through Hubei. Wen Xiao also knew that they had to cross almost the entire Huaxia. With such a long distance, they couldn't expect them to arrive in such a short time. If that's the case, we can only stay here for the night. It's good to have 2 crocodiles as companions. It won't be too boring. What do you think? It won't be too boring. Lin Ge said weakly. Let's talk less and conserve some energy. Who knows how that old fox wants to torture us? Let's take turns sleeping. Wen Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Lin Jiyi's words. You can sleep in a place like this? Aren't you afraid of drowning? Lin Ge was a little proud. I didn't grow up in the inland areas. After the Dragon Brigade sent me away, I lived by the sea for the rest of my life. I'll sleep first. Think of a way to rest yourself. After saying that, Lin Ge held a breath in his dantian and tried to relax his body. Then his whole body floated on the water. As long as he kept breathing and kept his lungs filled with air, Lin Ge could float on the water. Wen Xiao was really impressed. It wasn't because he could float. Any expert swimmer would know this move. The principle was very simple. But how many people could float and fall asleep in such a situation? There were still 2 crocodiles next door. These 2 beasts were much scarier than Old Wang next door. Are we really sleeping? Wen Xiao still couldn't believe it. Lin Ge closed his eyes and said weakly, if we don't conserve some energy, we won't be able to escape even if we want to. Wouldn't that be too much of a pity? What he said made sense. Wen Xiao waved his hand, indicating that Lin Ge should sleep if he could. He didn't have the ability to sleep on the water, and he wasn't that generous. He still had his worries. Although Uncle Xiang had been led into another line of thought by his own complicatedness. What would happen once he came back to his senses? At that time, how could Wen Xiao calm Uncle Xiang down? How could he convince Uncle Xiang that he and Lin Ge could help him? Only then could they save their lives and buy time for Su Yin to find them. Otherwise, they really couldn't be saved. What Lin Ge and Wen Xiao didn't dare to imagine was that Su Yin and the others really came by plane. They directly flew across almost the entire Huaxia and arrived at the border area. And they had already passed through the minefield and arrived outside the border. Su Yin was advancing rapidly according to the clues left by Lin Ge. Chapter 1842. The reason why Su Yin was advancing so quickly was obviously because of the explosion in the distance. Judging from the distance of the explosion, that place was at least a 2-hour walk away from where they were, so Su Yin sped up their advance. His intuition told him that there was something wrong with that place. Although there were quite a lot of mercenary groups in Southeast Asia, one thing was certain, and that was that these mercenaries were still very high quality because they were not a mob. Most of them were real soldiers, either because they had retired or because of some special reasons. They were all people who came out of the army, so they were organized and disciplined. As an organized and disciplined group, they would never have unnecessary conflicts for no reason. If there were sounds of conflict after the explosion just now, it meant that there was a confrontation. However, after that one sound, there was nothing else, which meant that it was definitely not a large-scale confrontation. This kind of unorganized and undisciplined thing was generally not done by mercenary groups, so Suyin had to suspect that this matter had something to do with Lin Go and Wen Xiao. If it had something to do with these two people, it basically meant that there was danger. So Suyin sped up. Whether his guess was right or not, he couldn't leave it alone. Under Suyin's influence, the other brothers also understood in their hearts. They followed closely, carefully maintaining their advancing formation. Not to brag, just the speed of their elite team's advancement was absolutely extraordinary. Even if they encountered some obstacles along the way, it was easy for them to get rid of a wave of people in a short time. Fortunately, Lin Ge left marks on the route to avoid all the mercenary group's bases, so they didn't encounter any unlucky guys. Boss, are they reliable or not? Didn't you say that before we arrived, they wouldn't make a move? Qianfeng said. If that sound was really caused by them, wouldn't they be in a very dangerous situation right now? Why do we have to speed up? It's because once they are exposed, it will be very dangerous. Han Zhan explained while avoiding a deep pit under his feet. According to the location of the sound, that place is very likely to be the target point that Lin Ge sent back. We have to be careful. Suyin didn't explain too much. As long as they reached the destination, they would naturally understand what happened. Suyin couldn't predict the specific situation now, but he was very clear that it must be a disaster. There was no doubt about it. So he could only speed up and reach the destination as soon as possible. If they were really in danger, he might be able to save them if he arrived one step earlier. If he was late, he might regret it for the rest of his life. During the process of moving, Suyin would occasionally give a few commands and basically didn't speak. Everyone knew how he was feeling now, so they knew what they should do. They silently followed behind Suyin and tried to speed up as much as possible, so that Suyin wouldn't be distracted and worry about them. With such a speed of advancement, everything went smoothly. Everyone knew what they were doing now. For the safety of their two brothers, this was enough to keep them clear-headed and ready to fight at any time. Finally, after an hour and a half of long-distance running, Suyin led the Brothers of Dragon's Fury to the target location. After entering the vicinity of the target location, they had to slow down. It was hard to say whether they would encounter an ambush. Just as they stopped to observe, Hua Xiaolu used the scope of his sniper rifle to observe an abnormal place. 10 o'clock, about 600 meters away, there is movement. Everyone quieted down. No one dared to make the slightest movement. They needed Hua Xiaolu to give a more accurate judgment. Hua Xiaolu, who had calmed down, carefully observed every movement that appeared. He was very clear on what that movement meant. After a few minutes, he was sure that there was only one sniper on the other side. This sniper hidden in the dark was someone arranged by Uncle Xiang. If it was a normal day, with Uncle Xiang's cautiousness and caution, he would never leave only one sniper to guard the door. But now that there was a big matter in the base, his focus had to be on the base. This also gave Suyin and the others a great opportunity. Of course, Suyin wouldn't miss this opportunity. There is a sniper. Who will take care of it? I will command. Hua Xiaolu smiled slightly and pointed at the microphone and earpiece hanging from his ear. Leave it to me. Gong Sunlung twisted his neck. He was the lightest among them, and his reaction speed was definitely the fastest. Of course, this kind of thing couldn't be done by Suyin. After all, Suyin was everyone's brain and commander. They would never agree to let him go. Han Zhan patted Gong Sunlung's shoulder and gestured for him to put on his earpiece. Be careful. Don't expose yourself. If Ice Dragon's target is exposed, immediately shoot and kill him. Suyin also said to Hua Xiaolu. They didn't shoot now because they were afraid of alerting the enemy. If the enemy noticed Gong Sunlung's figure, they would expose everything if they opened fire. There was no need for them to hold back. Killing the enemy sniper first and exposing their identity was safer than letting the enemy fire another shot at Hua Xiaolu. At least it would reduce Gong Sunlung's danger. Hua Xiaolu made an okay gesture to show his confidence to Su Yun. He was absolutely confident that he could take care of this. He aimed at the target while giving the route. Gong Sunlung and Hua Xiaolu were old partners who often went on missions together, so the tacit understanding and trust between the two was very high. Under Hua Xiaolu's command, Gong Sunlung's large movements were carried out in the enemy's blind spot. And in the enemy's sight, Gong Sunlung showed an absolutely cautious attitude. His movements were almost invisible to the naked eye. Just like this, although it was only a short distance of 600 meters, Gong Sunlung still used 10 minutes to find his way there. After all, he had to listen to Hua Xiaolu's command in the dark. He didn't even know the enemy's position. Stop. Hua Xiaolu carefully aimed at the enemy sniper and said softly into the microphone. The enemy is now at your 11 o'clock, 15 meters away. There are 6 trees between the two of you. At this distance, any movement you make will be seen by the enemy. There is no cover. And no matter how soft your voice is at this distance, it will still disturb the enemy. Gong Sunlung held his breath and quietly took out a combat dagger from his combat boots. He knew that the critical moment had arrived. Now he only needed Hua Xiaolu to give him the correct command, and give him the correct path. He quietly waited for the order to be given. Take 3 steps straight. After disturbing the enemy, quickly dodge behind the first tree in front of you. Then dash out from the left side. Let your legs explode, and try to hide behind the second tree in 2 seconds. You should be able to identify the remaining trees by now. It's up to you to decide which path to take. Remember, you must find cover as soon as possible. We can't be sure of the enemy sniper's ability. Hua Xiaolu said at the end. He was right to remind Gong Sunlung to find cover as soon as possible. The time an excellent sniper needed to aim and shoot was too short. If he couldn't find cover in a short time, the result wouldn't be what they wanted. After making the final arrangements, Hua Xiaolu didn't say anything else. He seriously raised his sniper rifle. If there was any abnormality, if Gong Sunlung was in danger, he would pull the trigger immediately. He wouldn't let his brother's life be threatened. Su Yun and the others were very nervous. None of them wanted to disturb the enemy camp. That would be detrimental to their future plans. Gong Sunlung finally made his move. He suddenly stood up and rushed behind the first tree like a cheetah. At this time, the disturbed sniper immediately realized the existence of danger. The atmosphere at the scene became tense. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.